Can I pay tomorrow? A 6-year-old asked for soup. 77 bikers, quietly covered. Everyone's meals. Can I pay tomorrow? The question barely made it past the boy's lips before the diner turned on him like he'd spit in their food. He was soaked to the bone, holding pennies so tight his knuckles had gone pale. The owner didn't even look up. Tomorrow doesn't exist in here, he said. Money or the door. Thunder rolled, and then, like the storm had teeth, 77 motorcycle engines growled into the parking lot at once and went dead. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you are watching this from. Rain rattled the windows of Lulu's diner, turning the highway outside into a blurred ribbon of headlights. Inside, the air was hot with grease and burnt coffee. The boy stood near the entrance, dripping onto the checkered tile, trying to look invisible. Behind the counter, a single bowl of chicken soup steamed, the kind of cheap warmth that could make you forget your problems for 10 minutes. The boy's eyes kept snapping back to it, then down to his coins, like staring harder might make them worth more. Frank Mullins, name stitched on his apron, temper stitched into his face, pushed a menu away with 2 fingers. You can't just wander in here, Frank said, loud enough for every booth to hear. Got a parent? Got a wallet? Because I'm not running a charity. The waitress froze with the ladle. Her tag said, Nora. She looked at the boy's shaking hands and tried to keep her voice steady. He's freezing, Frank. Frank's jaw tightened, and I'm keeping the lights on. The boy nodded too fast, like agreement could save him. I can wash dishes, he tried. I'm good. I can do it tomorrow. A couple people snickered. Most pretended not to. That was how this town survived, by looking away. Frank leaned over the counter, shadow swallowing the boy's hands. You touch my kitchen, I call the cops. You steal, I call the cops. You stand there dripping all over my floor and... His hand went for the soup bowl, not to serve it, but to pull it away. The boy flinched like he was about to be hit. The front door opened. Cold air knifed in, then leather, then silence. One biker stepped inside, then another, boots heavy on tile. Patches flashed under the lights, black fields, red stitching, a skull wrapped in barbed wire. They didn't swagger. They didn't shout. They filled the room with the kind of calm that made everyone else remember they had a pulse. And outside the windows, the parking lot was suddenly a metal forest, rows of bikes, headlights dimmed, rain sliding down chrome. 77 engines had just rolled in, and the sound of them stopping still seemed to vibrate in the tables. Frank's face flipped from anger to customer service in a heartbeat. Evening, fellas. The man who seemed to lead them took off his helmet slowly. Dark hair, trimmed beard, a thin scar tugging at the corner of his mouth. The patch on his chest read, Mace. The back patch on the man behind him read, Red Line Brotherhood. Real club. Real numbers. Real presence. Mace's eyes didn't go to the menu. They went straight to the boy. Not pity. Recognition. Half hidden under the boy's soaked sleeve was a braided bracelet, black and red, frayed at the knot, with a tiny brass ring threaded through it. Just a cheap little ring. But Mace stared at it like it was a key to something he'd been locked out of for years. The boy caught the look and jerked his wrist back, hiding it like he'd been caught stealing. Frank cleared his throat. What can I get you? Coffee, Mace said. Flat voice, no heat. And soup. Nora blinked. Chicken, stew, chili. That one, Mace said, nodding at the steaming bowl Frank had just reached for. Frank's fingers tightened around the bowl. That was, not for... Mace took one step closer. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply stopped Frank from moving the bowl any farther, with nothing but the space he occupied. It's for him, Mace said. The boy opened his mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to run. But nothing came out. Frank's eyes darted to the windows again, to the parking lot packed with bikes, to the men inside who hadn't even sat down yet. Look, he muttered, I don't know what you think you're doing, but I got rules. Mace reached into his vest and laid a black card down between 2 fingers. Put it on that. Frank didn't swipe it. Machine's been acting up, he lied. Cash is better. Mace held his gaze. Your machine works. No one moved. The room felt like a rope pulled tight. In the back booth, a man in a denim jacket lowered his fork and lifted his phone under the table. He didn't speak into it yet. He just watched, breathing through his nose like he was trying not to be seen. Nora's hands shook so badly she set the ladle down. Mace didn't blink. Run it. Frank swallowed, forced a smile, and swiped the card. The machine chirped, approved. The sound was small. The shift it caused wasn't. Frank's posture softened by a fraction, as if approval on a screen had suddenly reminded him these men weren't imaginary. Mace nodded once, not to Frank, but to his brothers. It was tiny. It still hit like a hammer. Chairs shifted, leather creaked. Bikers stood and walked to the register, placing cash and cards on the counter with quiet precision. Some of them didn't even order. They just paid. Frank's drawer popped open, closed, opened again, rapid, relentless, until the register looked like it was swallowing a flood. Nora stared like she'd forgotten how to blink. The denim jacket man finally pressed his phone to his ear and whispered, eyes flicking from Mace to the boy. Yeah, they're here. And he's here too. One of the riders drifted toward the back booth, not threatening, just present. The denim jacket man's whisper turned into a swallow. Frank tried to regain control. All right. You paid for the kids' soup. Congratulations. Now take your food and... Mace slid a receipt forward, then another, stacking them like cards. Frank frowned. What's that supposed to be? Mace looked around the diner, taking in the civilians, people who'd watched a hungry child get cornered and done nothing. His voice stayed calm. Those are everyone's meals. For a full second, the words didn't land. Then they hit. No, someone breathed. A trucker with a gray beard let out a laugh he didn't mean. A young mother covered her mouth. A teenager stared at his plate like it had just turned into a miracle. Frank's face went stiff. You can't... Yes, Mace said. We can. Then he turned to Nora. Print every ticket, add 20% tip, put it all on that card, and if anyone already paid, hand it back to them. Nora blinked, throat working. All of them? All of them. The riders made it real without theater. One dropped a thick tip into Nora's shaking hand. Another paid the cook through the kitchen window and nodded once like it was business. Another stopped at 2 separate tables, set bills down, and moved on without asking for thanks. It wasn't charity with a spotlight. It was a decision, a line drawn. People started talking at once, quiet, confused, grateful, ashamed. Frank stood behind his register like he'd just lost control of the only thing he thought he owned. Nora finally lifted the bowl of soup and carried it to the boy. The boy didn't reach for it right away. He stared at the bikers like warmth had teeth. Then his stomach betrayed him with a thin, desperate sound, and his hand moved before his fear could stop it. He took the spoon. Steam hit his face. His eyes watered. He didn't wipe them. Mace crouched slightly, lowering himself just enough to meet the boy's eye level. What's your name? The boy's gaze flicked to the window as if checking whether someone outside was watching. Eli, he whispered. Eli, Mace repeated. Eat. Eli took a shaky sip, and for the first time since he'd walked in, his shoulders dropped a fraction. Nora turned away fast, wiping at her cheek like it was just steam in her eyes. At the back booth, the denim jacket man ended his call and slid out a side door into the rain. Mace's eyes followed him for half a heartbeat. Then they snapped back to Eli's wrist as the sleeve shifted, showing the brass ring again. There was a tiny stamp on it, small enough that most people would never notice. Mace noticed. Something in his throat tightened. He straightened slowly, like the night had just changed shape. Outside, across the rain-smeared lot, a dark SUV idled behind a delivery truck, headlights off, watching the diner like it was waiting for someone to step out. Then, red and blue lights flashed once, quick, deliberate, like a signal. The front door banged open hard enough to ring the bell above it. A deputy stepped inside, uniform wet, eyes sharp. His gaze swept the wall of leather and patches, and then locked onto the small boy with the soup. Well, the deputy said, voice edged with ownership, there you are. The deputy didn't come in like he was answering a call. He came in like he owned the place. Rain beaded on his hat brim. His badge caught the diner lights every time he shifted. He took one look at the wall of leather and patches and didn't flinch. That alone made the room colder. Evening, he said, eyes already locked on Eli. Kid's supposed to be home. Eli's spoon froze. Soup dripped back into the bowl. His shoulders pulled tight like a noose had cinched. Nora tried to step in, voice careful. He just needed something warm, deputy. It's late and not your business, the deputy said, still smiling. He moved closer, boots squeaking on wet tile. Eli, come on, you know the rules. You don't go wandering. You don't go asking people for things. Frank perked up like the badge had handed him a spine. Deputy Rourke? I was just about to... Rourke held up a hand without looking at him. Frank, you and I talk later. His eyes slid over the counter, the stack of receipts, the open register drawer swollen with cash. He understood what had happened in here the moment he saw it, and something hungry tightened behind his smile. Mace didn't move. He just watched Rourke the way you watch a storm line, deciding whether to ride it out or get off the road. Rourke finally read the patch on Mace's chest. Red Line Brotherhood, that so? That's what it says, Mace replied. Rourke nodded slowly, like he was memorizing a name for later. Appreciate you boys stopping through, but you're stirring folks up. Folks were already stirred, Mace said. We just walked in. The diner wasn't cheering anymore. People were whispering, looking down at their plates like gratitude had turned into something dangerous. Holt, the tall rider by the door, shifted his stance so his body casually blocked the exit. Not a trap, just a message. If somebody wanted to run and make a call, they'd have to walk past him to do it. Rourke crouched slightly toward Eli, trying on a softer voice. Your mama's worried. She's got enough on her plate without you making problems. Eli's eyes flicked to the window. The black SUV was still idling in the rain, tucked behind a delivery truck. Its headlights were off. Eli swallowed. Rourke reached for Eli's arm. Don't, Mace said, not loud, still final. Rourke's hand paused. He straightened slowly. Excuse me? You don't put hands on him, Mace said. Rourke's smile slipped into something flat. That's a child. He's under my jurisdiction. He's underfed, Mace said. That's what he is. Silence hit the diner. Even Fork stopped. Rourke turned his head, taking in the booths. You folks enjoying your free dinner? Great. But strangers don't get to interfere with family matters. Nora, back to work. Nora's fingers tightened on her apron. She didn't move. Rourke's gaze flicked to Frank. You got health codes to worry about, Frank. Maybe I should take a look at that kitchen after we're done here. Frank's face drained. Mace looked at Frank once. You already took their money, he said quietly. Don't take their backbone too. Rourke leaned closer to Eli again, voice dropping. You want to make your mama sicker, kid? You want to make her cry? Because that's what you're doing when you run around begging. Eli flinched like the words were a slap. Nora's voice broke through, trembling. Don't talk to him like that. Rourke snapped his head toward her. What did you say? I said he's 6. Rourke's eyes hardened. And I said he's coming with me. Eli slid off the chair, eyes bright with tears he refused to wipe. No, he whispered. It was tiny. It was still the bravest sound in the room. Rourke reached again. Holt stood up, not aggressive, just standing, tall enough to change the air. 2 more riders rose with him, calm and silent, like a chain tightening. Rourke stopped inches from Eli's sleeve. He stared at Holt, then at Mace. For a moment, it looked like he might actually think. Then he did what men like him always did when they felt the room slipping. He pressed his radio. Unit 2, Unit 3. I need you at Lulu's, now. The answer came too fast, like the units had already been parked nearby. Copy, Rourke. 2 minutes. Rourke kept his gaze on Mace. You boys passing through, he said. That's fine. But this town has order. Mace's eyes stayed on Eli. Order doesn't look like fear. Rourke's mouth twitched. Fear keeps people in line. Eli's hand shook so hard, the spoon rattled against the bowl. Mace watched Eli's sleeve slip as the boy clutched the edge of the table. The braided bracelet rode up, exposing the tiny brass ring threaded through it. There was a stamped mark on that ring, so small it should have meant nothing. Mace's throat tightened anyway. Rourke noticed Mace noticing. His eyes narrowed. What's that? He asked, nodding at Eli's wrist. Eli yanked his sleeve down fast. Nothing. Rourke smiled again, and it was worse this time. Funny how people always say that. Rourke's gaze dropped to the side door near the bathrooms. He saw Eli glance at it and smirked like he'd already won. Eli moved anyway. He bolted between stools, wet shoes squealing on tile. Nora gasped. Frank shouted. Rourke lunged. Mace stepped into his path. Not a tackle, not a punch, just a shoulder in the way. Rourke stumbled half a step, surprised more than hurt, and that half-step was all Eli needed. The side door slammed open. Night and rain swallowed the boy. Holt was already moving, fast and quiet. 2 riders followed. Another rider stayed by the counter, eyes on the front windows, ready for the 2-minute promise to arrive. Rourke recovered, face dark. "Stop him!" he barked. Mace didn't sprint. He watched Rourke's eyes flick to the SUV through the window. Confirmation, not concern. Then Mace went out the front door. The parking lot hit him like ice. Rows of bikes sat in the rain, engines ticking as they cooled. The black SUV's brake lights glowed once, then went dark again. From the far end of the lot, a patrol car rolled in without siren. Red and blue flashed once, quick, deliberate, then went dark. Signals, not safety. Mace cut between bikes and rounded the diner into the back alley. Trash cans. A wide puddle. Wind shaking the kitchen door. Eli was halfway down the alley, slipping in the mud, trying not to cry and failing. Holt stayed a few feet behind him, hands out but not grabbing. "It's okay," Holt said. "We're not going to hurt you." Eli shook his head hard. "I can't go back," he choked. A car door closed nearby. Mace stepped between Eli and the mouth of the alley, scanning. 2 men appeared at the far end, not in uniform. Hoodies, hands in pockets. One had a flashlight he didn't need. They walked like they'd done this before. "There he is," the taller one said, already moving in. "Come on, kid, you're making it worse." Eli's face drained. He backed up, heel hitting water, shoulders pressed to brick. "No," he whispered again, but it came out like a sob. Mace spoke softly. "Stop." The man kept coming, then saw the wall of riders and slowed. The shorter one forced a laugh. "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" "People who pay attention," Mace said. The taller man squinted at Mace's patch, then glanced over his shoulder toward the delivery lot like he was checking for permission. "He ain't yours," he said. "He's on an account." "An account," Holt repeated, voice flat. The shorter man shrugged. "Not our rules. We just collect." Footsteps slapped behind them, fast, heavy. Rourke rounded the corner into the alley, rain plastering his uniform to him. Another deputy was right behind, hand resting on his holster like he wanted everyone to notice. Rourke smiled, thin as wire. "There you are," he said, eyes on Eli. "You really want to do this back here?" Mace crouched just enough to meet Eli's eyes. "Tell me," he said low. "Those guys, who are they?" Eli's lips trembled. "They work for him," he whispered. "They take people when they don't pay." "And your mama?" Mace asked. Eli swallowed hard. "She says she'll pay tomorrow. She always says tomorrow." Rourke's smile held steady. "See? Kid knows. Now hand him over." Mace stood, jaw set. He reached down and gently took Eli's wrist, not to pull, just to steady. The little brass ring flashed in the alley light, the tiny stamped mark catching Mace's eye like a hook in skin. "I'd rather do this in the light," Mace said. Rourke's smile didn't move. "You don't get to decide where anything happens." Mace didn't answer. He just turned and walked, Eli beside him, the riders closing in around them like a quiet shield. Inside the diner, faces pressed to the glass, watching as if they'd forgotten how to look away. Rourke stayed in the rain with his men and his smile. Mace didn't let Rourke turn it into a scene. He walked Eli back through the rain like the alley never happened, like this was the most normal thing in the world, an adult escorting a kid to safety, while 77 bikers made normal feel impossible. They didn't crowd the boy. They didn't talk over him. They formed distance and space, a moving pocket of calm. The diner's glass was packed with faces, everyone pretending they weren't memorizing every detail for later. Rourke stayed by the patrol car, radio in hand, watching them go as if he'd already decided how the story would be told. The hoodies lingered near the delivery trucks, not leaving, not closing in, just waiting for a signal. Mace put Eli between himself and the road. "Where's home?" he asked. Eli hesitated, then pointed with 2 fingers, like even directions could get him punished. "The trailers, by the water tower." Holt leaned in just enough to be heard. "That's the edge," Mace nodded. "We're going." Eli's eyes widened. "No, if you go there, he'll get mad." "Who?" Mace asked. Eli swallowed. "Deputy." "Deputy doesn't own the road," Holt said. Eli shook his head so hard it looked like it hurt. "He owns my mom." That sentence hit harder than any threat. Mace's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes tightened like a knot being pulled. They didn't ride all 77 bikes down at once. That would have been a parade, a declaration. Mace didn't want a declaration yet. He chose 6 riders, quiet ones, older ones, men who had learned that volume didn't equal power. The rest stayed around the diner, spread out, watching routes, watching the black SUV, watching the patrol car that still idled like it wasn't sure whether to leave or follow. Mace put Eli on the back of Holt's bike, a big touring seat with a backrest. Holt handed the boy his spare rain jacket, swallowing him in leather and warmth. Eli's small hands gripped the sides, and for a second, he looked like he'd never been allowed to hold on to something that wasn't slipping away. Mace rode in front. He kept his speed steady. He didn't race the storm. He didn't give the town the satisfaction of seeing panic. They cut off the highway and onto side roads that turned to slick black ribbons under their tires. Houses thinned, streetlights became occasional sickly pools. The air smelled like wet pine and cold metal. Eli pressed his chin against Holt's back. "She's going to be in trouble," he whispered. Holt spoke without turning his head. "What's your mom's name?" Eli hesitated. "Marla." Mace heard it through the helmet intercom and felt his jaw set. "Is she sick?" Eli nodded so hard Holt's jacket creaked. "She's sleeping, but not like sleeping, like she's disappearing." Mace glanced in his mirror. Eli's face was barely visible under the hood, but his eyes were wide and shiny. Too old for 6, too careful. "What happened tonight?" Mace asked. Eli's voice went even smaller. "There wasn't food, and she was shaking, and she said don't go out, but she said it like she didn't have the air to say it." He sniffed. "So I went anyway. I just needed soup. Just one bowl." Mace didn't answer with comfort. Comfort was cheap. He answered with direction. "We're going to see her," he said, "and we're going to make sure nobody touches you." They reached the trailer park under the water tower 10 minutes later. It wasn't a park. It was a scattering of tired metal boxes sunk into mud, porch steps tilted, tarps strapped down with rope. The tower loomed above it like a giant, watching something it didn't care to stop. Holt pulled into a narrow lane. Mace killed his engine and listened. Wind, rain, a dog barking somewhere far off. No music, no laughter, no life. Just the low hum of a single street lamp flickering like it was about to give up. Eli pointed. "That one." The trailer was smaller than the others. The skirting was missing in places, exposing black gaps. A single porch light hung by a wire, still on, casting a weak yellow cone onto wet steps. Mace walked up first. He didn't draw attention. He didn't knock hard. He touched the door lightly and listened again. Inside, a faint sound, like someone breathing through cloth. He knocked once. No answer. Eli squeezed past him, unlocking the flimsy latch with a key he pulled from his shoe. "She says don't leave keys where they can find them," he whispered. "Who's they?" Holt asked. Eli didn't answer. The door opened and a wave of stale heat hit them. Old carpet, canned soup, bleach, and something sickly sweet underneath. Mace stepped in and stopped. The living room was one narrow strip. Couch, tiny table, a stack of mail, and a framed photo knocked sideways on the wall. A woman's voice came from the back bedroom, not words, just a weak sound like she was trying to speak and couldn't. Eli ran down the hall. "Mom," he whispered, urgent, breaking. "Mom, I got help." Mace followed, slower, scanning for signs of struggle. Holt and 2 others stayed at the door, watching outside through the gap in the blinds. The bedroom was dim, lit by a cheap lamp. Marla lay on the bed under a thin blanket, skin pale and damp, hair stuck to her forehead. She looked 30 and 70 at the same time. One hand clutched her stomach. The other was outstretched like she'd tried to reach for something and fallen short. When she saw Mace, she tried to sit up too fast and almost blacked out. "Eli," she rasped, "what did you do?" Eli climbed onto the edge of the bed, crying quietly like he was trying not to waste sound. "I got soup. I didn't steal. I didn't steal." Marla's eyes snapped to Mace's patch, then to the men behind him. Fear took over the little oxygen she had. "No," she whispered. "No, please, don't. I can pay. I can pay." Mace kept his hands visible, palms open. "We're not here to collect." Her eyes flicked to the doorway as if expecting Rourke to appear anyway. "They'll come," she said, voice shaking. If you're here, they'll come. Mace moved closer, just enough to be heard. Tell me what's going on. Marla swallowed. Her throat worked like it hurt. You need to leave, she said. You don't understand this town. I understand hungry kids, Mace replied. Eli grabbed her hand. Mom, they paid. They paid for everybody. They paid for the diner. Marla's eyes widened, and that wasn't relief. It was terror. Oh, God, she breathed. Oh, God, no. Mace caught it. Why's that bad? Marla stared at him like he was standing on train tracks and didn't hear the whistle. Because now they'll think I sent him, she said. They'll think I'm trying to shame them. They don't like being shamed. Holt's voice came from the living room, low. Mace. Mace didn't look away from Marla. Who's they? He asked again. Marla's face tightened. She shook her head. Deputy Rourke, she whispered, like saying it louder might summon him. And Mr. Calder, he owns the lot, he owns the loans, he owns everything. Eli wiped his nose with his sleeve. Calder's the man with the shiny truck. Marla flinched. Eli stopped talking. Mace's eyes narrowed. Loans? Marla tried to laugh, and it turned into a cough that folded her in half. Eli grabbed her shoulders, terrified. Mace stepped in, steadying her with one hand on the bed frame, not touching her. When the coughing stopped, Marla whispered, It was supposed to be help. Just a little until I got back on my feet, and then it wasn't help anymore. It was a leash. Holt appeared in the bedroom doorway, rain dripping off his jacket, expression hard. Someone's in the lane, he said. No lights, moving slow. Marla's face drained of what little color she had left. They're here. Eli's breath hitched. No. Mace's voice stayed even. How much do you owe? Marla shook her head. It doesn't matter, she whispered. It never goes down. They keep adding, fees, penalties, late, tomorrow, always tomorrow. Eli looked up at Mace, eyes huge. That's why I said it, he whispered. Can I pay tomorrow? That's what she says. The sentence hung there, and Mace felt something inside him go colder, not because it was sad, but because it was practiced, a script forced into a kid's mouth. Mace leaned in. Marla, listen to me. I need you to tell me what they've threatened. Marla's eyes filled. They said if I miss again, she swallowed. They said they'd take Eli for a night until I remembered my responsibilities. Eli made a broken sound, half sob, half gasp. Mace didn't move for a full second. Then he looked at Holt, and Holt understood without words. Holt's hand went to his phone. Another rider moved to the window, peering through the blind crack. Outside, a car door closed, soft, deliberate. Then, footsteps on wet gravel. Mace turned back to Marla. Do you have any paperwork? Anything with names, amounts, signatures? Marla's eyes darted to a drawer beside the bed. In there, she whispered. But don't touch it. If it's missing, they'll... A knock hit the front door. Not a neighbor knock, not a polite knock. A knock that said, We already decided. Everyone froze. The second knock came, harder. Marla, a man's voice called through the thin metal door, stretched with false friendliness. You awake in there? We got a quick little talk. Eli slid off the bed and backed into the corner like he wanted to merge with the wall. Marla's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mace walked out into the living room, calm as if he was heading to refill coffee. Holt and the others were already positioned. Quiet angles, no weapons shown, no threats given. The blinds trembled slightly from the wind, or from the fact that someone was standing too close outside. Mace paused by the table where the mail sat. He picked up an envelope with a stamped logo, Calder Financial, then set it down like it had weight. The knock hit again, a fist now. Marla, the voice called, less friendly. Open up. Don't make this a whole thing. Frank's diner receipt paper was still in Mace's pocket, damp at the edges. He felt it there like a reminder. Tonight started with soup. It wasn't going to end with soup. He walked to the door and rested his hand on the latch. Holt leaned in, barely a whisper. Want me to answer? Mace shook his head once. I will. He unhooked the chain slowly, letting the sound carry. Outside, a shadow shifted, close enough that the porch light made it tall and stretched. Mace pulled the door open. A man stood on the steps in a rain jacket that cost more than the trailer. Mid-40s, smooth face, smile that never reached the eyes. Behind him, half a step to the side, Deputy Rourke waited under the porch light with his hands in his pockets like he'd come for a friendly visit. The man's eyes flicked past Mace, into the trailer, searching. Then he smiled wider. "There you are," he said to Mace, as if they'd met before. "We need to collect what's due." Rourke leaned forward, voice soft and private. "And we need the boy." Mace didn't step back. He stayed in the doorway like the trailer had grown a spine, letting the porch light paint his face in hard angles. Rain hissed off the steps. Calder stood there smiling, the kind of smile that expected the world to move out of his way. Deputy Rourke stood just behind him, relaxed, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the hall where Eli had disappeared. Calder's gaze flicked over Mace's vest patch, then to the men visible behind him inside. His smile didn't wobble. He'd been around intimidation before. He thought he knew the math. "Evening," Calder said, tone smooth. "Didn't mean to bother you fellas. This is just business." "Business at midnight on a sick woman's porch," Mace said. "Interesting model," Rourke chuckled softly, like they were sharing a joke. "You folks passing through, right? You don't want trouble. Take your charity show back to the highway." Behind Mace, Holt shifted, blocking the line of sight into the trailer without making it obvious. Another rider, Smitty, stood by the tiny kitchen counter, staring at the drawer Marla had pointed to earlier like it was a safe. Calder held up a folder, edges crisp despite the rain. "Marla signed papers," he said. "We extended help. She agreed to terms. Terms are terms." Mace didn't reach for the folder. "Show me the terms." Calder's eyes narrowed a fraction, then widened again into that same false warmth. "You can read them when you're not standing in my way." Rourke leaned in, voice quieter, meant for only Mace to hear. "You want to be smart, you'll walk away. People who poke into private agreements around here end up with bad luck." Mace's eyes stayed on Calder. "Where's the body cam, Deputy?" Rourke's smile froze. "What?" "If you're so confident this is legal," Mace said, calm, "you wouldn't mind recording the conversation." Rourke's nostrils flared. "My equipment is none of your concern." Mace nodded once, like that was all he needed. "Exactly." Calder exhaled through his nose, patience thinning. "Let's not complicate this," he said. "Marla owes. If she can't pay money, she pays another way. That's how the world works." From the back bedroom, Marla coughed, raw, wet, uncontrolled. It didn't sound like someone who had time. Eli made a tiny noise, muffled, like he'd pressed his face into a pillow to keep from being heard. Calder heard it anyway, his eyes lit with satisfaction. "There he is," he said softly. "Kid's got lungs. That's good. Strong kids are—" "Finish that sentence," Holt said from inside, voice flat. Calder's smile stayed, but his eyes slid toward Holt and then away. "No need for drama," he said. "Deputy, can you ask the boy to come out? I don't want him scared." Rourke's head tilted. "Eli," he called into the trailer, gentle like a bedtime story. "Come on, bud, let's go. Your mom's tired." Eli didn't answer. Rourke's smile tightened. "Eli." Mace didn't raise his voice. He said no. Rourke's eyes snapped to Mace. "A 6-year-old doesn't get to say no to law enforcement." "You're not here as law enforcement," Mace said. "You're here as his muscle." Rourke's cheeks colored. "Watch your mouth." Calder lifted a hand. "Let's keep this polite," he said, like he was the one with restraint. Then he leaned slightly, trying to see around Mace into the hallway. "Marla, sweetheart, why don't you come out here? We'll set this straight." Marla didn't come out. Her breathing sounded like she was dragging air across gravel. Calder's smile vanished for the first time. "All right," he said. "We'll do it the hard way." He took one step forward. Mace didn't shove him, didn't strike him. He simply held the doorframe and stayed there, making the step impossible without escalation. Calder looked down at Mace's boots on the threshold, then back up. "You boys think your patches mean you can interfere with contracts?" he said. "You think you can stroll into my town and break my system?" Mace replied, "I think you're using that badge to steal a kid." Rourke's hand came out of his pocket. Not a gun. A pair of cuffs, dangling like a threat that pretended to be procedure. "You want to accuse a deputy? You better have proof." Mace's eyes didn't leave his. "We're gathering it." The air tightened. Behind Calder, headlights washed the lane. A second vehicle rolled up slow and quiet, parking without urgency. Two more men stepped out, shoulders hunched under rain jackets. Not cops, not quite. They moved like collectors, like the hoodies from the alley had brought reinforcements. Calder didn't look at them. He didn't have to. They were extensions of him. Rourke's voice softened again, just a touch of poison. Let's be reasonable. You don't know Marla, you don't know her habits. She's unreliable. She signs up for help, then she plays victim. Meanwhile, a kid's out in public making a scene. That's neglect. Mace glanced back down the hall. He could feel Eli's fear through the thin walls. Neglect, Mace repeated, like leaving her without medicine? Marla's weak voice floated from the bedroom, a whisper cracking. Eli, don't. Calder's eyes flicked to the nightstand inside, where a pill bottle sat beside a glass with a finger of water. His gaze lingered, and Mace saw the calculation. Not money. Leverage. Calder shifted his weight, then looked up and smiled again, like he'd found his angle. How about this, he said, voice almost friendly. You boys want to play hero? Pay her balance, right now. Then you can take your soup story and ride on. Mace tilted his head. How much? Calder opened the folder, flipped it with a practiced thumb. With fees, late penalties, enforcement costs. He clicked his tongue as if it pained him. 5,000. Holt laughed once, sharp. For a trailer like this, for a sick woman? Calder shrugged. Interest is the price of delay. Mace said nothing. He let the quiet sit long enough for Calder to fill it with his own arrogance. Calder leaned closer. You've got money. I saw what you did at the diner. You can afford 5,000, or... His gaze slid past Mace again, toward the hall. Or we take a different payment, temporary, just until she remembers how responsibility works. Rourke's smile returned. Boy rides with us for the night, comes back in the morning. No harm, just incentive. Inside, Eli let out a muffled sob that he tried to swallow. Mace's voice went colder. You're saying that on a porch with witnesses? Calder's eyes flicked to the windows of nearby trailers. Curtains were cracked open, faces hid in shadows, people who had learned to watch quietly. Calder didn't care. Witnesses don't testify, he said. They live here. Mace's gaze moved across the lane, counting the eyes, the cracked doors, the trembling curtains. The town had been trained to be silent. Holt's voice came low through the room, meant only for Mace. We've got it, he murmured. Mace didn't look back, but he understood. Smitty had opened the drawer. Calder followed the tiniest shift in Mace's posture and narrowed his eyes. What are you doing in my client's house? Checking if you're telling the truth, Mace said. Rourke's patience snapped. That's it. Step away from the door. He moved, closing distance. At the same time, the two men behind Calder moved too, angling toward the porch steps as if they were about to rush in on a count. Mace spoke once, steady. Stop. No shout, no threat. But the riders behind him shifted into place like a single organism, quiet shoulders, controlled angles, turning the cramped trailer interior into a wall. Rourke halted. Calder's men hesitated. The rain kept falling, indifferent. Calder's mouth curled. You won't fight, he said, testing it. Not with a kid in there, not with a sick woman. You're trapped by your own morals. Mace's eyes held his. You're trapped by your own habits. Calder's smile thinned. Deputy, go get the boy. Rourke started forward again. Then Smitty stepped into view behind Mace and held up a stack of papers, creased, stained, and real. On top was a ledger page with names, amounts, dates. Beside it, a smaller slip with a signature line and a stamp that read, Calder Financial. Smitty's voice was calm. This what you're here for. Calder's eyes sharpened. Marla's breath hitched from the back room, a sound of pure panic. No, don't. Calder didn't lunge. He didn't need to. He simply looked at Rourke. Rourke's expression changed from smug to flat efficiency. He took one quick step toward the bedroom door. Mace moved into him, shoulder to shoulder, blocking without striking. The two men behind Calder surged forward. Holt met them at the threshold, hands up, palms open, stopping them like a bouncer stopping drunks. Not violence, just denial. One of Calder's men tried to shove past Holt. Holt didn't swing. He simply redirected the man's wrist, twisted his momentum, and put him on the porch boards with a hard, controlled thud that made the wood ring. The second man froze, suddenly unsure whether this was worth his paycheck. Rourke's hand went to his holster now, thumb brushing leather. "You just assaulted a citizen," he said. Holt didn't look impressed. He tripped. Calder's smile vanished completely. His voice dropped. "Give me those papers." Smitty held them higher. "You want them? Come get them." Calder's gaze slid to Mace, then to Eli's haul, then back to the papers. He measured options, searching for the one that kept him in control. He chose leverage. Calder pointed with 2 fingers toward the bedroom. "Fine," he said softly. "Then we take what's mine in a different form." Rourke moved fast. He didn't go for Eli first. He went for the nightstand. In one smooth motion, he stepped past the bedroom doorway and snatched the pill bottle off the nightstand. Marla's voice rose, thin and desperate. "No, please!" Eli screamed, sharp and small, and it ripped through the trailer like glass breaking. "Mom!" Mace's body went rigid. For a split second, the room balanced on a knife edge, the moment where fists would fly and everything would burn. Mace forced his voice to stay level. "Put it back," he said. Rourke held the bottle up, shaking it once so the pills rattled. "She needs to understand consequences," he said. So does he. Calder stepped closer, satisfied again. "Now," Calder said, "you boys can ride away and forget this, or you can hand over the papers and the kid comes with us for the night. Your choice." Marla's coughing turned into sobbing. Eli was crying openly now, no longer able to hide it. Mace stared at the pill bottle in Rourke's hand. He saw exactly how this town worked. Not guns, not prisons, just small cruelties applied with a badge and a smile. Holt's voice came low through the room, urgency tucked under control. "Mace, SUV is moving." Mace glanced toward the window. Through the blinds, headlights slid across the lane. The black SUV from the diner had made it here, creeping in without lights, joining the scene like it had always been part of the plan. Calder's eyes flicked to the papers again, hungry, and Mace realized what Calder truly feared wasn't a fight, it was exposure. Mace took a slow breath, then he lifted his hands slightly, palms out, as if surrendering an argument rather than a man. "Okay," Mace said. Calder's smile returned, relieved and arrogant. "Smart." Mace's eyes stayed on Rourke. "Give her the medicine." Rourke's mouth curled. "After." Mace nodded once like he'd accepted terms. Then he reached into his vest and pulled out his phone. Calder's brow furrowed. "What are you doing?" Mace looked at him. "Calling an ambulance," he said, calm. "Because if she dies tonight, you lose your leverage." Calder's face tightened. "You don't call anyone." Mace pressed the screen anyway, and in that second, Holt's phone buzzed in his hand, the screen lighting up with a message from the diner team. One line, all caps, like a warning shot. "Rourke just left 2 units out front. They're coming now." The moment Holt read the message, he didn't look up. He didn't announce it. He just shifted closer to Mace, close enough that one word could pass without anyone else hearing it. "Units are rolling," Holt murmured. 2 out front, more coming." Mace kept his face still and his phone at his ear like he was listening to the dispatcher. He spoke calmly, giving the address in clipped pieces, describing a woman in respiratory distress, possible complications, urgency. He didn't mention bikers. He didn't mention a deputy holding medication like a hostage. The ambulance didn't need the whole story to arrive. Calder's eyes narrowed. "Hang up," he said, voice sharpening. "Right now." Mace didn't. He stared straight at Calder, forcing him to choose between screaming and exposing himself. Calder chose control. He turned his head slightly toward Rourke. "End this," he said. Rourke's jaw flexed. He shook the pill bottle once more, letting the rattle travel through the room like an insult. "This is what happens when you invite outsiders into your mess," he said toward the bedroom, loud enough for Marla to hear. "You want to make it harder on your kid? Keep pushing." Eli's sobs had gone quiet. That was worse. Quiet meant he was trying to disappear. Mace lowered his phone, call still connected, and took one slow step toward Rourke. Not aggressive, just inevitable. "Put it back," Mace said again. Rourke's hand hovered near his holster. "You touch me, I'll—" "You'll what?" Holt asked, tone flat. "Shoot in a trailer with witnesses? Or do you save that for the ones who can't talk?" Calder lifted a hand like he was calming animals. "Nobody's shooting anybody," he said, and the way he said it made it clear. Not because it was wrong, but because it was inconvenient. Rourke's smile turned thin. "Then we do it clean," he said. and looked past Mace into the hallway. "Eli, come here." Eli didn't move. Mace heard the smallest scrape of a shoe in the bedroom, like the boy had pressed himself farther into the corner. Calder sighed, impatient. "He's scaring the kid. Let's not drag this out." He held out his hand toward Smitty. "Papers." Smitty didn't hand them over. He tucked the stack against his chest and stepped deeper into the living room, out of easy reach. Calder's eyes flicked to the front window. Through the blind crack, headlights slid into the lane. A patrol car stopped without siren. The flash of red and blue popped once, then died. Rourke's backup had arrived. Calder relaxed a fraction, like reinforcement was oxygen. "See?" he said softly to Mace. "Order." Mace didn't look at the window. He watched Rourke's fingers on the pill bottle, watched the way Rourke held it, carelessly, like it was nothing. Like a sick woman's breath was a bargaining chip. Mace's voice stayed calm. "You're going to give it back." Rourke stepped back into the bedroom doorway, using the wall as cover, and lifted the bottle higher. "Or what?" he asked. "You going to start a war over vitamins?" Marla's voice rose, weak and trembling. "Please," she rasped. "Eli, I'm sorry. Please." Calder's eyes gleamed. He liked this part. He liked watching people fold. Mace made a decision without announcing it. He didn't move toward the pill bottle. He moved toward the table where the mail sat. He picked up the envelope with Calder Financial stamped on it and turned it over. A return address, a phone number, a P.O. box, all clean, all legal-looking. Calder noticed and scoffed. "That means nothing," he said. "It means you want it to look like something," Mace replied. He set the envelope down, then looked at one of his riders at the door. Jax. Jax, a quiet man with gray in his beard, stepped forward. Mace handed him the phone. "Stay on with dispatch," Mace said. "If anything changes, you describe it." Jax nodded once, eyes hard. He didn't look at Calder. He looked at Rourke. Mace then turned his head slightly, speaking to Holt through clenched calm. "Get Eli," he said, barely audible. Holt moved without drama. He went down the hall, slow, hands open, and crouched near the bedroom door like he was approaching a scared animal. Eli was in the far corner, knees hugged to his chest, face wet, eyes locked on Rourke's hand with the bottle. Holt spoke low. "Hey, buddy, look at me." Eli's gaze flicked to Holt for a second, then snapped back to Rourke. "I'm not going to let him take you," Holt said, "but you got to come with me. Quiet, okay?" Eli's breathing trembled. He shook his head once. Holt didn't rush him. He glanced at Marla. Her eyes were half-lidded, panic burning through exhaustion. She tried to lift her hand toward Eli and couldn't. Holt whispered, "If you stay, they can use you. If you move, we can protect you." Eli's lip quivered. Then he gave the smallest nod. Holt slid in, shielding Eli with his body, and lifted him gently. No yanking, no grabbing. Eli's arms wrapped around Holt's neck automatically, like his body understood safety before his brain allowed it. The sound made Rourke's head snap toward them. "Hey!" Mace moved at the same time. Not a punch, not a tackle. He stepped into the bedroom doorway, blocking Rourke's line and forcing him to choose. Reach for Eli or keep the pill bottle. Rourke's eyes flashed with anger. "You don't get to—" Mace leaned in just enough. "You touch that kid," he said quietly, "and every person in this lane will remember your face forever." Calder barked a laugh, but it came out tight. He'd expected fear. He was watching discipline. Outside, another car door closed. Heavy boots on wet gravel. Someone knocked once on the trailer's front wall, an impatient signal. Rourke's radio crackled. "You got a situation?" a voice asked. "We're at the door." Rourke didn't answer. His eyes stayed on Holt carrying Eli down the hall. Calder's voice sharpened. "Stop him." The two men in hoodies moved to step inside. Smitty and another rider, Bear, simply shifted into the narrow space between them in the hallway. Arms relaxed, chests squared. The hoodies hesitated. They had intimidation, but not certainty. And uncertainty is what stops men who are used to easy victims. Calder's face tightened. "Deputy." Rourke's hand finally moved to his holster. Mace didn't blink. "You draw in here," he said, "and the first thing the dispatcher hears is you threatening a sick woman with her medicine." Jax's voice carried from the living room, calm and loud enough for everyone. "Ma'am, I'm still on the line," he said into the phone. "We have a deputy on scene." He is withholding medication from a patient. He has mentioned taking a child. Please note that. Calder's eyes snapped to the phone. For the first time, real anger leaked out. "You idiot," he hissed at Rourke, not loud but venomous. Rourke froze. That one sentence had changed the board. Calder recovered fast, stepping forward like a man used to controlling rooms. "Dispatch hears whatever you want them to hear," he said smoothly. "These are bikers. They're trespassing. They're intimidating a woman. Deputies here to restore order." Jax didn't react. He kept his voice steady into the phone. "Also note, a man identifying himself as Mr. Calder is present. He is demanding papers and referencing debt. He has suggested taking a child as collateral." Calder's smile finally cracked. "Hang up," he snapped louder now. Mace stayed in the doorway with Rourke, eyes locked. He could feel Rourke's calculations spinning. If he grabbed Eli now, he'd look like exactly what he was. If he kept the medicine, he'd be recorded doing it. If he put it back, he lost leverage. Rourke chose spite. He didn't put it back. He tossed the pill bottle into his pocket and stepped out onto the porch. "Fine," he said, voice raised for the outside units. "We got armed trespassers. Get in here." That was the line, the one designed to turn everything into a police problem. Two deputies pushed the door wider from outside. Then they stopped. Because the trailer wasn't full of drunk men waving weapons. It was full of still men, hands visible, eyes steady, a sick woman coughing in the bedroom, a child being carried gently down the hall like a rescue, not a kidnapping. The deputies' eyes flicked to Rourke, and something in their faces shifted. Not sympathy, self-preservation. They didn't want this on their careers. Rourke saw it too and snarled, "Move." One deputy hesitated. "Deputy, what exactly is—" Rourke cut him off. "Do what I said." Mace stepped out of the bedroom doorway into the living room, slow, hands open, addressing the new arrivals without pleading. "She needs an ambulance," he said. "It's on the way. We're not threatening anyone. We're keeping a kid safe." Calder stepped in beside Rourke, voice honeyed again. "These men broke into my client's home," he said. "They stole documents. They're obstructing a lawful retrieval of collateral." "Collateral?" the hesitant deputy repeated before he could stop himself. Calder's eyes narrowed. "Yes," he said. "That's what happens when people don't pay." The word hung there, ugly in the small room. The deputy's mouth tightened. He glanced toward the hall where Holt was moving with Eli. "That's a kid," Calder smiled, but it was strained. "Temporary," he said, as if that made it better. Mace watched the deputy's face. The deputy wasn't righteous, but he wasn't built for this level of rot either. That was the crack. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, not close yet, but real. The ambulance. Rourke's eyes darted to the window, panic disguised as anger. "We're done here," he snapped, and reached for the hallway again, like he could still salvage leverage. Mace stepped into his path. "No!" Rourke's hand hit Mace's chest, shoving. Mace didn't shove back. He simply didn't move. The deputies watched that, watched Rourke shove first. Jax kept narrating into the phone, voice calm. "Deputy Rourke has just shoved a civilian while attempting to access a minor." Calder's face went tight with fury. "Enough," he hissed. "Get the papers and get out." Bear, still between the hoodies and the hall, lifted the stack of documents just high enough for the deputies to see. "These?" he asked. "The ones that list names and amounts? The ones with fee structures that never go down?" Calder's eyes flashed. "Those are private." Mace looked at the hesitant deputy. "If it's legal," he said, "you won't mind reading it." The deputy didn't answer. But he didn't advance either. The siren grew louder. Marla coughed again, wet and terrifying. Eli clung to Holt's shoulder, face buried, shaking. Mace's voice lowered, aimed at Calder now. "This ends tonight," he said. Calder leaned closer, rain dripping off his hairline. "Not in my town," he whispered. Mace didn't whisper back. "Especially in your town." The ambulance pulled into the lane with lights flashing, washing the trailers in red and white. Two EMTs jumped out with a stretcher, eyes wide as they took in the bikes, the deputies, the tension. "Where's the patient?" one called. Mace stepped aside immediately, clearing the hallway. "Back bedroom," he said. "Breathing trouble." For a second, everyone in the trailer paused, because the arrival of medical help made the whole situation too real to keep pretending it was just business. The EMTs pushed past, focused, doing what they were trained to do. Calder's jaw flexed. He'd lost time. He'd lost control of the narrative. He looked at Rourke, and the message was clear. Take something before we leave empty-handed. Rourke's eyes went to Eli. Holt tightened his hold on the boy. Mace saw it, and he stepped half a pace closer, positioning himself so that if Rourke moved, he'd have to move through Mace first. Eli lifted his head from Holt's shoulder just enough to look at Mace. His eyes were red and pleading. "Please," he whispered, voice barely there. "Don't let them take me." Mace held the boy's gaze and nodded once. Not dramatic, not promised by God, just certain. The EMTs moved like they'd been dropped into the wrong movie. One of them, a woman with a tight bun and tired eyes, stopped at the threshold when she saw Deputy Rourke, then the leather vests, then the kid clinging to Holt. Her partner pushed the stretcher anyway, because Marla's coughing had turned into a sound that didn't care about politics. "Back bedroom," Mace repeated, stepping aside so cleanly there was no excuse to call it obstruction. The EMTs disappeared down the hall. The woman's voice snapped into professional cadence. "Ma'am, can you tell me your name? Look at me. Good. Keep breathing with me." Calder watched them go, jaw working. Medical care took away his favorite weapon, time. Rourke's eyes stayed on Eli. He didn't like losing leverage either. He shifted, trying to angle around Mace toward the hallway like he could still grab the boy in the confusion and call it procedure. Mace moved half a step, matching him without touching. Stillness, not aggression. A door that didn't slam, just refused to open. "Deputy," the hesitant cop, name tag Pierce, said quietly from the porch. "What exactly are we doing here?" Rourke didn't look at him. "Doing our job," he snapped. Pierce glanced at the EMT's gear going past. "Our job isn't whatever this is." Calder cut in smoothly, reclaiming the air. "Officer, you're witnessing trespass," he said. "These men forced entry, stole documents, intimidated a woman." "Documents," Pierce repeated, eyes flicking to Bear's hands. Bear raised the stack slightly, not waving it like a flag, just letting it be seen. "Want to tell me how taking a kid is collateral?" he asked, voice low. Calder's smile tightened. That was a misunderstanding. Eli made a small sound against Holt's shoulder, something like a laugh that turned into a sob. He'd heard the word too many times to believe it could ever be a misunderstanding. From the bedroom, the EMT called out, "We need oxygen and a clear path. Now." Mace answered instantly, "You've got it." Rourke hesitated. For the first time all night, he looked uncertain, not because of morality, but because now he had multiple professionals watching him do something ugly. The dispatcher was hearing Jax's calm narration. 2 deputies were seeing a sick woman. The noise was getting recorded in more than one way. Calder leaned toward Rourke, too close, whispering through his teeth. "We leave with something." Rourke's hand slid toward his pocket, the one with the pill bottle. Mace saw it. "Give it to the EMT," Mace said, voice calm. Rourke's eyes flashed. "It's evidence." "Of what?" Mace asked. "Her having lungs?" Pierce's mouth tightened. "Deputy," he warned, barely audible. Rourke held the stare for one more beat, then yanked the bottle out and tossed it hard onto the tiny kitchen table, where it bounced and rolled to a stop. It wasn't kindness. It was damage control. Mace didn't thank him. He just picked it up and carried it down the hall himself, handing it straight to the EMT. "She needs these," he said. The EMT took one look and nodded. "Good." From the bedroom, Marla's voice rose weakly, panicked. "Eli?" Holt shifted, tightening his hold. Eli lifted his face, eyes red and bright. "Mom," he whispered back, barely loud enough to travel. Mace leaned toward Holt. "Let her see him," he said. Holt hesitated. "If he goes back there, they won't," Mace said. "Not with me standing here." He stepped into the hall like a post driven into the floor. Holt carried Eli a few steps down so Marla could see his face from the bed. Marla's eyes fluttered open wider at the sight of him, and the panic eased just enough for the EMT to work. Not fixed, not safe, but eased. Calder watched that moment with irritation. The family bond made his system look like what it was. He turned to Bear, voice sharp now. Hand over those papers. Bear didn't move. No. Calder's smile came back like a mask forced onto a cracked face. Then you're stealing. Then arrest him, Bear said, glancing at Pierce. Or read them. Pierce's gaze flicked to the ledger page. Names, amounts, dates, a column of fees that stacked like bricks. He didn't reach for it, but his eyes lingered longer than comfort. Calder noticed and stepped closer to Pierce, lowering his voice. Officer, you're new in town. You're not trying to make enemies. Pierce held his gaze. I'm trying to do my job. Calder's eyes narrowed. Then do it. Get these men out. Pierce looked at Rourke, and something passed between them. Rank, loyalty, pressure. Pierce swallowed, then shook his head once. We can't remove people from a residence unless we have... We're done discussing, Rourke snapped. He took a step toward Bear. Mace moved from the hall back into the living room, not blocking like a bouncer now, but placing himself where everyone could see him. You want those papers, he said to Calder. You can ask a judge. Calder's eyes hardened. You're not staying in this trailer. We're not staying in your town, Mace said. Not long. Just long enough. Calder's gaze cut to the window. Outside, more headlights idled at the lane entrance. The black SUV sat back like a spider. Men inside, waiting. And now the ambulance lights were a beacon, drawing attention. Calder didn't like attention. He made a choice that looked like retreat and felt like threat. Marla's going to the hospital, he said. Good. She can recover. She still owes. That doesn't change. Mace answered softly, It changes everything. Calder ignored him and stepped toward the porch. Rourke, he said, we'll finish this later. Rourke didn't want to leave empty-handed. He glanced at Eli. His jaw flexed. Mace saw the calculation and spoke before it could become action. If you try to touch him, it won't be a quiet story anymore. Pierce heard it, and his eyes flicked to Rourke's hands. Rourke forced a laugh he didn't feel. You think you can threaten a deputy? Mace's voice stayed even. I think you threatened a kid, and your town watched. That landed, not because it was poetic, but because it was true. Curtains were still cracked open across the lane. Eyes were still there. People who'd been trained not to speak were watching a deputy lose control in real time. Calder descended the steps into the rain. Rourke followed, still wearing his badge like armor. The other deputies lingered a second, uncertain, then backed out too, because nobody wanted to be the one left inside when the story turned. Pierce paused at the threshold, looking at Mace. You're making this worse, he said, but his voice didn't have conviction. Mace met his eyes. It's already worse, he replied. We just stopped pretending. Pierce swallowed and stepped out into the rain. The door closed. The trailer felt smaller. The air was still sharp with danger, but at least the danger was outside for the moment. In the bedroom, the EMT said, We're transporting. Now. Marla's eyes found Mace. They'll take him, she whispered, voice breaking. They'll punish him for tonight. Mace stepped closer to the bed, keeping his tone low so he didn't spike her breathing. They won't, he said. Not while we're here. Marla looked like she wanted to believe him and couldn't afford to. You don't know them, she rasped. Mace didn't argue. He simply nodded toward Bear holding the papers. Those names, those amounts, how many people is he doing this to? Marla's eyes flicked away. Shame. Fear. A lifetime of being told silence was survival. A lot, she whispered. More than you, Holt said. Marla's breath hitched. People disappear, she admitted, voice barely there. They move. They go. Eli tightened his arms around Holt again. Mom, he whispered, pleading, as if he could pull her back with a word. The EMT slid a mask over Marla's face and adjusted the oxygen. Ma'am, focus on breathing, she said. We'll talk later. They lifted Marla carefully. The stretcher wheels squealed on the thin floor. The room moved around the bed like a tiny machine suddenly forced to work fast. Mace walked beside the stretcher as they pushed it down the hall and out the door. Rain hit Marla's face for a second before they covered her, and she flinched weakly. Eli tried to follow, panicking. I want to go. Holt held him back gently. She's going to get help, Bud. Eli struggled. I have to. Mace crouched in front of him, blocking his path with presence, not force. Listen to me, he said. You want to help her? You stay safe. You let her get to the hospital. You do exactly what we say for the next hour." Eli's eyes searched Mace's face like he was looking for the lie. Then his lip trembled and he nodded, small and desperate. Outside, the ambulance doors shut. A paramedic climbed in. The lights flashed brighter. The siren cut through the trailer park as it pulled away, dragging attention with it like a blade. Calder stood near the lane entrance under the water tower, hands in his pockets, watching the ambulance leave with a calm that didn't match the moment. Rourke stood beside him, staring at the trailer like it was a target he'd revisit. Mace watched them back through the rain. When the ambulance disappeared down the road, Calder finally turned and walked toward his SUV, satisfied in a quiet way. Not because he'd won, because he believed he had time. Time was always his weapon. Mace turned back inside. Bear set the papers on the table and spread them in a fan. Smitty pulled out a small flashlight and scanned the ledger entries. Names kept going, amounts kept growing. Late fees stacked like punishment. Holt sat Eli on the couch, wrapped in the rain jacket, and handed him a glass of water. Eli's hands shook so hard the water trembled. Mace looked at the boy's wrist again, the braided bracelet, the tiny brass ring, the stamped mark that kept pulling at him. He forced himself to stay on the present, later for questions, now for survival. "All right," Mace said, voice low. "We do this clean." He pointed at the papers. "We photograph everything, every page." Bear nodded. Smitty already had his phone out, snapping high-res shots, making sure dates and signatures were readable. Mace pointed toward the diner team's number still open on Holt's phone. "Get me Juno," he said. "Tell her to start pulling witnesses." The diner crowd saw Rourke. They heard collateral. They watched him shove. "We need statements while fear is still fresh." Holt dialed without asking who Juno was. A woman answered on the second ring, voice sharp, awake, already moving. Holt relayed in a tight burst. She didn't ask questions. She started assigning. Mace pointed to Jax. "Call our medic friend in the city. I want Marla's hospital protected from visitors. If Calder shows up, I want the staff already warned." Jax nodded and stepped out into the rain to make the call where it wouldn't be overheard. Mace looked at Smitty. "Find an address on those papers, a real one." Smitty tapped a line. "P.O. box, but there's a physical address on the stamp page. Office listed under Calder Financial Services." Mace nodded once. "Good." He turned to Bear. "You still got eyes on the lane?" Bear peered through the blinds. "SUV's still there. Patrol car, too. They're not leaving. They're waiting to see if we move the kid." Mace looked down at Eli. The boy stared at the floor like it might open and swallow him. "Eli," Mace said softly. Eli's head snapped up. His eyes were huge. "Do you have any family outside this town?" Mace asked. Eli hesitated. "My grandma," he whispered. "But Mom said she can't come here. She said they, got to her too." Mace nodded, absorbing it. "Okay, then you stay with us tonight." Eli swallowed hard. "They'll come." "They already did," Holt said. "And they left." Eli's voice cracked. "They always come back." Mace didn't sugarcoat. "Then we'll still be here." He stood and took out his phone again, scrolling to a contact that wasn't a name, just a symbol. He pressed call. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, rough and awake. "Yeah." Mace spoke quietly, eyes on the rain-streaked window. "I need the full run," he said. "All of them. Bring the boys." A pause, then the voice sharpened. "How many?" Mace glanced around the tiny trailer, at Eli on the couch, at the photographed ledger, at the empty space where Marla had been. He felt the town closing in already, like a net. "All 77, he said. He ended the call and looked at Holt. "By sunrise, this town learns what attention feels like," he said. Eli's small voice trembled from the couch. Are they coming for me?" Mace looked at him. "They're coming so nobody can." The first bikes arrived before dawn, when the trailer park was still pretending to sleep. Eli woke to the low, distant rumble and sat bolt upright on the couch, clutching the borrowed jacket like it was armor. For a second, he didn't know where he was. Then he remembered the deputy's smile, the pill bottle, his mom's wheezing, and his stomach dropped again. "They're here," he whispered. Holt was already at the window, peeking through the blinds. "Not them," he said. "Us." Headlights slid across the muddy lane in steady intervals, not chaotic, not reckless. The bikes rolled in like a controlled wave, two at a time, then three, then a line. Engines cut one by one, the sound dying into rain and dripping eaves. Men dismounted quietly, hoods up, helmets under arms, patches dark in the early light. 77. The trailer park felt too small for that many bodies. Curtains cracked open wider. Someone's porch light flicked on, then off. Mace stood near the kitchen table where the papers lay spread. He didn't look impressed by his own numbers. He looked like a man counting exits. Juno arrived with the second wave, rain slicking her short hair back. She wasn't in leather. She wore a plain dark jacket and carried a clipboard like a weapon. She glanced at Eli once, just once, and her face tightened. "Diner witnesses," she said to Mace. "We've got 8 willing to talk if they don't have to do it here. 2 more who'll talk if they can do it anonymously. Nora's one of them. Frank's shaky." "Make it easy," Mace said. "No speeches, no pressure, just statements." Juno nodded. "Pierce?" she asked. Mace's eyes shifted to the lane entrance. A patrol car sat there, idling, watching. Pierce wasn't in it. Pierce was standing behind it, in the rain, arms folded, like he hadn't decided what side of his own life he was on. "He's still breathing," Mace said. "That's something." Eli rubbed his eyes with his sleeve. "Are we going to the hospital?" he asked. His voice sounded smaller without the night's adrenaline. "Not yet," Holt said. "We're waiting for a call." As if the words triggered it, Mace's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then handed it to Jax without comment. "Marla's in," Jax said after a beat, voice low. "Stable for now. They've got her on oxygen and fluids. Hospital staff has already had a visitor asking questions." Eli's face drained. "They're there?" "Visitor left when he saw security," Jax added. "Our friend at the hospital's watching the entrance. Marla's protected." Eli's breath came out in a shaky rush, half relief, half fear he didn't know where to put. Mace nodded once. "Good. Now we move." He stepped outside, and the morning swallowed him, cold, wet, gray. The riders were spread along the lane in quiet positions, not blocking anyone's way, just existing in numbers that made intimidation hard to sell. No one shouted, no one revved engines. The whole thing felt less like a gang and more like a wall built overnight. Calder's black SUV still sat back near the water tower, lights off, tinted windows hiding faces. Mace stared at it for a long moment, then turned his attention to Pierce. Pierce watched him approach and didn't step back. That was either courage or calculation. Mace stopped a few feet away. "Deputy Rourke around?" he asked. Pierce's jaw tightened. "He's at the station," he said, "and he's furious." "Good," Mace replied. "Fury makes mistakes." Pierce glanced past Mace at the line of bikes, the men standing in rain like statues. "You're turning this into something bigger," he said. "It was already bigger," Mace said. "We just put lights on it." Pierce's eyes flicked to the trailer. "Kid still inside?" "He's safe," Mace answered. Pierce hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Calder's been making calls. People in this town, they don't like attention, but they like Calder's money more." Mace held his gaze. "Then you know what you're part of." Pierce swallowed. "You don't understand how deep it goes." Mace's expression didn't change. "Then show me." Pierce's eyes drifted toward the SUV, then away. "I can't," he said. "Not alone." "You won't be," Mace said. Pierce studied him, then finally asked the question he'd been choking on since the night before. "Why do you care? You're not from here. You paid a diner tab and now you're building an army in a trailer park." Mace didn't answer immediately. His eyes went to the trailer window, where Eli's small silhouette moved behind the blind. "Because I've seen this before," Mace said, "and because that kid said a sentence I've heard in nightmares." Pierce frowned. "What sentence?" Mace didn't repeat it. He just said, "You help me do this clean, or you watch it get messy." Pierce's mouth tightened. He looked like he hated both options. Then his radio crackled. "Pierce," a voice said, "you're needed at Calder Financial, now." Pierce's eyes flicked up. Mace caught the name like a hook. "Calder Financial," he repeated. Pierce's gaze hardened. "He's calling everyone in," he said. "He's going to claim you're threatening his business." Mace nodded once. "Perfect." Juno stepped up beside Mace. "We've got statements ready," she said, "and we've got the dispatcher log from last night. The call about medication and collateral is time-stamped. Mace turned slightly. Bring it, he said. And bring Nora. Juno didn't blink. She's scared. So am I, Mace said. Bring her anyway. They didn't roll into town like a parade. They broke into smaller groups and moved with purpose. 10 bikes stayed at the trailer park with Holt and Eli, positioned so no one could approach without being seen. Another group went to the diner to collect the rest of the witnesses. Another moved to the hospital to keep eyes on Marla's room and the entrance. Mace took 12 riders and Juno and went straight to Calder Financial. The office sat off the main strip like it wanted to look respectable. Glass front, clean sign, little parking lot with fresh gravel. It looked like a place where people went to fix problems. It was also the place where problems were made. As they approached, Mace saw 3 patrol cars already parked out front. Rourke stood at the entrance, shoulders squared, hand resting on his duty belt like he'd practiced the pose. Calder stood beside him in a pressed coat, umbrella held like royalty, smiling at the arriving bikes as if welcoming customers. Mace parked and dismounted calmly. The riders behind him formed a loose line, not aggressive, just present. Rain pinged off helmets, water ran down patches. Calder stepped forward first, voice bright. There you are, he said. I was hoping we could speak like adults. Rourke cut in, louder. You're causing a disturbance. You're trespassing on private property. You've got a child in your custody that isn't yours. Juno stepped up with her clipboard. We have statements, she said, voice crisp, from civilians who witnessed you threaten a sick woman's medication and describe a minor as collateral. Rourke's face flushed. That's a lie. Calder smiled wider, too calm. Words get twisted, he said, in stressful moments. But I'm glad you brought paperwork. Because I have paperwork too. He tapped the glass door behind him, where a printed notice was taped at eye level. No trespassing. Private property. Violators will be prosecuted. Mace glanced at it like it was a child's drawing. You want to prosecute, he said. Go ahead. Calder's eyes narrowed. I will, he replied. But first I want my documents back, the ones your men stole. Mace nodded slightly toward Bear, who stepped forward holding a sealed envelope. You want documents? Mace asked. Calder's eyes lit with satisfaction. Finally. Bear didn't hand the envelope to Calder. He handed it to Pierce, who had arrived behind the patrol cars and now stood there looking like he hadn't slept. Pierce blinked. Why me? Chain of custody, Mace said. If you're a cop, act like one. Calder's smile faltered for the first time. Pierce, don't play games, he warned quietly. Pierce's jaw tightened. He took the envelope anyway, eyes flicking from Calder to Rourke. What is this? He asked. Mace replied. Evidence. Rourke stepped closer, voice hard. You're not turning this into an investigation, not with bikers running around pretending they're law. Juno held out her clipboard toward Pierce. These are witness statements, she said. Nora from Lulu's Diner, Frank Mullins, 2 truckers, a mother and her teenage son. They all heard collateral. They all saw Deputy Rourke shove a civilian and withhold medication. Pierce looked at the papers and didn't reach for them, not yet, but his eyes read. And reading was the first betrayal. Calder leaned in, umbrella tilted so his face stayed dry. Officer, he said gently, you don't want to be the man who sides with outsiders over your own. Pierce swallowed. I want to be the man who doesn't get sued for ignoring a kid being trafficked as debt, he said, and the words came out sharper than he meant. The air froze. Calder's smile went thin. Trafficked is a serious word, he said. So is collateral, Juno replied. Rourke's face shifted, anger flashing into something else. Enough, he snapped. We're not doing this here. You all need to leave. Mace glanced at the patrol cars. You got a warrant? He asked. Rourke's nostrils flared. I don't need one to restore order. You do if you're going to take a child, Mace said. Calder's eyes flicked, just once, to the side of the building where 2 men in hoodies stood near a back door, pretending to smoke. The same type of men who'd been in the alley. Collectors, watchers. Mace saw them too. He didn't point. He didn't call attention. He simply pulled his phone out and held it up, screen facing outward. Calder's brows pulled together. What is that? Mace's thumb tapped once. It's recording, Rourke sneered. You're recording officers? That's intimidation. Mace's voice stayed calm. It's accountability. Calder's eyes narrowed. Turn it off. Mace didn't. Say what you said last night, he told Calder, about different forms of payment. Calder's smile returned, slow and cold. You're trying to bait me, he said. Not bait, Mace replied. Truth. Calder looked at the line of bikes, the clipboard, Pierce holding an evidence envelope, civilians gathering across the street to watch. He realized attention had arrived whether he liked it or not, so he did what men like him always did when cornered. He lied, smoothly, in public. I have never, Calder said loudly, asked for a child as payment. That's absurd. Juno's pen moved. Pierce's eyes sharpened. Rourke relaxed slightly like a line had been drawn that he could stand behind. Then Calder made the mistake. He turned his head toward Rourke and said, quieter, but still picked up by the phone, Get the boy, and this ends. The words landed in the rain like a gunshot. Rourke's face changed fast, too fast. I didn't, he started. Mace's thumb tapped again, saving the clip. Across the street, one of the civilians, an older man in a work jacket, whispered, Jesus, loud enough for others to hear. Calder's smile vanished. He realized what he'd just done, and the rage that flashed through him was real. He leaned toward Mace, voice low, venomous. You think a recording changes anything? He hissed. This is my town. Mace held his gaze. Not today. Calder's eyes flicked to the hoodies by the back door again. Mace followed the glance, calm. If they move, he said, still recording, you'll be on video ordering it. Calder's umbrella hand tightened. Rourke's radio crackled suddenly. A voice rushed through. Deputy, there's bikes at the trailer park. Kid's not there. Holt had moved Eli. Mace didn't react, but Calder did. His head snapped. His eyes went bright with something sharp and ugly. Rourke barked into the radio. What do you mean, not there? The voice answered, panicked. They took him. We can't see him. Calder's jaw clenched so hard it looked like it hurt. He took one step toward Rourke, whispering furiously, and even without hearing the words, Mace knew the message. Fix it now. Mace kept the phone up, capturing the whole thing. Rourke looked at Pierce, then at the crowd, then at the bikes, and finally at Calder. He made a decision that wasn't lawful or smart, just desperate. He turned and strode toward his cruiser, hand on his radio, shouting orders that sounded like a net being thrown over the town. Rourke didn't slam his door like a man in control. He slammed it like a man trying to keep something inside him from spilling out. His cruiser roared to life. Another patrol car lit up behind him, sirens still off, lights pulsing once, twice, then going dark again as they pulled out. Not a response. A hunt. Calder stayed on the sidewalk under his umbrella, jaw clenched, watching the cars roll. He didn't have to speak. The hoodies by the back door had already peeled away, walking fast into the rain like dogs released from a leash. Across the street, civilians lingered in small knots, pretending they were waiting for buses or checking their phones. But everyone's eyes were on the same thing, the town's order moving like it had just been threatened. Mace lowered his phone and slid it back into his vest. He didn't celebrate the recording. He didn't smirk. He watched the patrol cars disappear and felt the pressure shift, because the moment Rourke realized Eli wasn't where he expected, the deputy stopped playing defense. Juno exhaled through her nose. They're going to hit the trailer park hard, she said. They already tried, Bear muttered. Pierce stood a few feet away with the envelope still in his hand, rainwater dripping off his hat brim. His face looked tight, like the word collateral had lodged in his throat and wouldn't move. Mace glanced at him. You can still do the right thing, he said. Pierce swallowed. Right thing gets you buried in paperwork, he muttered. Wrong thing gets a kid buried in a ledger, Mace replied. Pierce flinched, eyes flicking to Calder's office sign like it had become something ugly. He took one step back toward his patrol car, then stopped, trapped between reflex and conscience. Calder watched him with a look that said, Remember who feeds you. Mace made the call without raising his voice. Holt, he said into his comm. Status. Holt answered instantly, wind and rain in the background. Kid secure, moving. No address, no details, just what needed to be said. Don't stop, Mace replied. Assume every road has eyes. Holt's voice was tight. Copy. Juno leaned closer. Where'd you put him? Somewhere the town doesn't think to look first, Mace said. That was true. Holt hadn't taken Eli to the diner, not after Calder had eyes there. He hadn't taken him to the hospital, not with visitors already sniffing. He'd moved him to a place that wasn't on Calder's mental map, because Calder's map was built on debts, businesses, and fear. Holt had taken him to the only building in town that people still pretended was neutral. The old community church, one street behind the strip, brick walls, a small side room used for food drives that hadn't happened in months. The pastor was a quiet man who owed nobody anything but still owed the town his silence. Holt had showed up with a shaking kid and a look that asked for one honest act, and the pastor had unlocked the side door without questions. But neutral didn't stay neutral when predators got hungry. At the church, Holt kept Eli in the back room behind stacked folding chairs and donated blankets. He didn't tell the boy to hide like a criminal. He told him to sit still because people were about to do stupid things. Eli clutched a paper cup of water with both hands. His knees bounced. His eyes kept going to the stained glass window like he expected Rourke's badge to appear behind it. "They're gonna come," Eli whispered. Holt crouched to his level. "Then they're gonna find me first," he said. "And they're not getting past me." Eli swallowed. "He always gets past." Holt didn't argue. He just stayed there, a wall with a heartbeat. Outside, engines approached and cut off in the rain. Not bikes, a car, two. Tires crunching gravel. Holt's hand lifted slightly, signaled to the two riders posted by the side door to get ready without moving too fast. Through the frosted glass of the church entry, a silhouette paused, then shifted closer. A knock hit the door. Not polite. Then Rourke's voice came through the wood, smiling like it owned God. "Pastor," Rourke called, "open up." The pastor's footsteps sounded in the hall, hesitant, dragged out like he was trying to buy seconds. Holt whispered to Eli, "Don't make a sound." Eli pressed his mouth shut so tight his lips went white. The pastor reached the entry, hands shaking. "Deputy," he said, voice thin, "what's this about?" "Missing child," Rourke replied. "I got reason to believe he's here." Holt's jaw tightened. He heard the exact phrasing. Not, "I'm worried." Not, "We need help." Reason to believe. Legal-ish. A way to kick the door if needed. The pastor swallowed. "I haven't seen a child." Rourke's tone softened. "Pastor, don't protect people who don't belong. I'm trying to keep the town safe." Holt almost laughed. It would have been the ugliest laugh of his life. Rourke continued, voice still gentle. "Open the door and let me look around. If he's not here, I'll be on my way." The pastor hesitated. Rourke's voice lost its warmth. "If you refuse, I can get a warrant. But you and I both know how that looks." That was the squeeze. Not for truth, for optics. Shame the pastor into compliance. Holt's two riders shifted in the side hallway. One of them, Nash, mouthed, "What do we do?" Holt didn't answer. He held up one finger. Wait. Because Holt wasn't trying to win a fight inside a church. He was trying to win time. His comm buzzed softly in his helmet. Mace's voice came through, calm but edged. "Holt, they're sweeping. Where are you?" Holt answered low. "Church." A pause, then Mace. "Move, now." Holt's muscles tensed. "He's at the door." "Then you have seconds," Mace said. "Take the back. I'll draw them." Holt swallowed, then nodded to Nash. "Back exit," he whispered. Nash eased the rear door open an inch. Rain slipped in like a cold hand. The alley behind the church was empty, at least empty of people. But empty didn't mean safe. Holt scooped Eli up, firm but gentle. Eli stiffened, panic spiking, and Holt whispered in his ear, "Quiet, breathe." They moved, not running, moving fast, controlled, out the back room, down a narrow hallway, past hymnals and folding chairs. The church smelled like dust and candle wax and old carpet. Behind them, the front door handle rattled once. The pastor's voice rose, pleading. "Deputy, please, this is a house of worship." Rourke's voice cut through. "Open it." A heavy thud hit the wood. Holt pushed through the rear door into the alley. The rain slapped his face. Eli's hands clamped around Holt's shoulders like claws. Nash and another rider, Finch, slipped out behind them and shut the door quietly. They moved down the alley toward the bikes hidden behind a dumpster and a brick outcropping, out of sight from the street. Holt set Eli on the seat of Nash's bike and shoved the spare helmet on him. Eli's breath was ragged. "Where are we going?" Somewhere they can't talk their way into, Holt said. A shout came from the front of the church, not the pastor. Rourke. Now. The church door banged again, wood groaning. Holt swung onto his bike with Eli behind him, felt the boy's arms wrap around his waist. Nash and Finch mounted too. Engines fired, quiet as possible, but even quiet engines made sound in an empty alley. They rolled out, turning onto a back street just as a patrol car swung around the corner of the church, tires hissing on wet asphalt. The patrol car's headlights found them. Rourke's radio voice exploded through the cruiser speaker, distorted but clear enough. "There! Stop them!" The patrol car surged. Holt didn't gun it. He didn't race like a stunt. He accelerated in a clean line, choosing streets that forced the cruiser to hesitate, narrow lanes, potholes, blind corners. Nash and Finch rode tight behind, forming a triangle around Eli without crowding him. Eli's helmet knocked against Holt's back as he tried not to sob. "He's gonna catch us," he whispered. "Not if we don't panic," Holt replied. 2 blocks later, another patrol car slid into view at an intersection, angled as a barrier. No siren, no lights, just a quiet block. Holt recognized it as the town's real tactic: stop you without making noise. Holt took the right turn early, jumping the curb onto a strip of grass and back onto pavement, avoiding the block by inches. The patrol car jerked forward late, tires chirping, trying to follow. Nash's bike clipped a puddle and fishtailed. For half a second, his rear tire slid out, and Eli squealed, grabbing Holt tighter. Nash recovered with a controlled correction, but the near crash sent Eli's fear through the roof. "They're everywhere," Eli gasped. Holt's comm crackled. "Mace again." "Holt, route!" Holt spoke fast, eyes scanning ahead. Back streets, 2 cruisers behind. "Potential block ahead." "Turn toward the river road," Mace said. "I'm placing eyes." Holt didn't ask how. He trusted that Mace had already moved pieces. They hit the edge of town where streetlights thinned and trees crowded closer. The river road ran along a dark drop, guardrails slick with rain. It was dangerous in the day. At dawn, with cops hunting, it was a knife. Holt took it anyway. Behind them, the lead cruiser stayed close, headlights bright, pressure constant. The second cruiser trailed wider, trying to swing around for a pass. Ahead, a set of headlights appeared, coming toward them, too fast. A black SUV, not a patrol car, Calder's men. The SUV drifted across the center line, just enough to force Holt to choose: slow and get boxed, or risk the edge. Holt chose neither. He tapped his rear brake twice, signaled to Nash and Finch, then aimed for the narrow shoulder on the right, inches from the guardrail. He didn't stop. He squeezed through the gap between SUV and rail, metal inches from metal. The SUV's mirror scraped the guardrail with a screech that cut through the rain. Eli screamed, pure terror, face pressed into Holt's back. Holt stayed steady, eyes forward, throttle clean. The SUV swerved to follow, but the cruiser behind it couldn't. Its bumper was now blocked by the SUV's sudden move. For a brief, beautiful moment, the town's own pieces jammed each other. Holt took the moment and widened the gap. Nash and Finch cleared the squeeze too, Nash's handlebars barely missing the rail. Eli was shaking violently now, breathing too fast. Holt felt it through the boy's arms and knew hyperventilation when he heard it. "Eli," Holt said, louder now, "listen to my voice. In through your nose, out slow." Eli tried, failed, tried again. The river flashed black to the right, rain whipped sideways. The cruisers recovered and pushed harder. And then Holt saw it, a third vehicle ahead parked sideways across the road. A full stop, no lights, no markings. Just a dark shape blocking the lane like a trap. Holt's heart dropped, but his hands stayed steady. He had 2 options: hit the brakes and get boxed from behind, or leave the road. He chose the third option. He aimed for the narrow break in the trees where an old service path cut down toward the riverbank, mud and gravel, barely a road at all. He took it. The bike dropped onto the path with a violent jolt. Eli yelped. Holt stood on the pegs, absorbing the impact, controlling the slide. Mud sprayed. The back tire hunted for grip. Nash and Finch followed without hesitation. Behind them, the lead cruiser tried to follow, and the moment its front tires hit the mud, it slid sideways, bumper swinging, driver overcorrecting. The cruiser fishtailed hard and slammed into a tree with a dull, ugly crunch. No explosion, no movie fireball, just metal folding and the sound of airbags popping. The second cruiser braked in time, stopping at the path entrance. Its driver didn't follow. Not because he didn't want Eli, because he didn't want to die for Calder. Holt didn't look back. They tore down the service path until it opened into a small clearing by the river, an old maintenance lot with a locked gate and a rusted shed. 3 bikes waited there already. Mace's men, a planned handoff. Holt rolled in, cut his engine, and Eli clung to him like he didn't trust gravity anymore. Mace stepped out from under the shed roof, rain dripping off his hair. "You good?" he asked Holt. Holt nodded once. "They boxed us, SUVs too." Mace's eyes hardened. "Of course." Eli slid off the bike, legs wobbling. He ripped his helmet off and gulped air like he'd been underwater. His face was streaked with tears and rain, indistinguishable. Mace crouched in front of him, close enough to feel his shaking. "Eli," he said, "look at me." Eli's eyes snapped to his. "You just did something brave," Mace said. "Now I need something from you." Eli swallowed hard. "I don't know anything." "Yes, you do," Mace replied, voice steady. "You've been hearing things your whole life and pretending not to. Tonight you said something in the trailer, about tomorrow, about them taking people when they don't pay. Where do they take them?" Eli's lip trembled. He shook his head automatically, fear trained into him. "I can't say." Mace held his gaze. "Your mom is in a hospital bed right now because of them. You want her to ever breathe without fear again?" Eli's eyes squeezed shut. Then he blurted, voice cracking, words tumbling out like he couldn't stop them once they started. "Blue door," he gasped. "The place with the blue door by the old feed store. They said Blue Door 17, and then they laughed. And the man in the shiny truck said if Mom talks, he'll put her name in the book and take me to Blue Door." Mace went still. Holt's jaw tightened. "Feed store?" he repeated. Eli nodded hard, sobbing. And there's a light by the water tower. When it blinks twice, it means they're coming. Mom always turns off the lamp when it blinks twice." Mace's eyes lifted toward the town skyline, where the water tower stood like a watcher. He didn't say thank you. He didn't make it a moment. He stood, already moving, and his voice turned into orders. "Juno," he said into the comm, "we've got a location. Old feed store, Blue Door, number 17. He looked at Holt. "You stay with Eli, no exceptions." Holt nodded once, pulling Eli close and wrapping him back in the rain jacket. Eli's hands shook as he clutched the fabric. Mace turned to the riders waiting in the clearing. "We go quiet," he said. "We go clean. We document everything." Rain hammered the shed roof. In the distance, far back up the service path, an engine idled. Someone had stopped at the entrance, not coming down, watching. Mace didn't look away from the direction of town. He just said, "Now we find out what's behind the blue door." They didn't ride straight to the feed store. Mace took 2 turns too many, doubled back once, killed headlights on a backstretch, and approached from the service road that ran behind the warehouses, because Calder's people watched the obvious routes. The point wasn't speed. The point was arriving without giving the town time to arrange its lies. The old feed store sat at the edge of the industrial strip like a forgotten tooth. Its sign still hung, half-twisted. The windows were boarded from the inside. A chain-link fence leaned inward, patched with zip ties and rust. Mud swallowed the lot. And there it was. A door painted blue that didn't belong on a building like that. Too fresh, too intentional. In the gray light, it looked almost bright, like someone wanted it noticed by the right people and ignored by everyone else. "Blue Door 17, Bear muttered, scanning the wall. Mace raised a fist. Everyone froze. Engines off. Silence. 2 riders moved wide, watching the street. 2 more circled the back fence line. Juno stayed near the bikes with a body cam clipped under her jacket and a phone already recording, because clean meant evidence, not drama. Mace crouched by the fence and ran his fingers along the chain. Fresh oil on a link. Recent. Used often. "Someone's here," Holt's voice came through Mace's comm from wherever he was keeping Eli. "Any update?" Mace didn't answer Holt. He didn't want his focus split. He clicked once in acknowledgement and cut the line. He nodded to Smitty. Smitty slid a small bolt cutter from his saddlebag, wrapped the jaws in cloth to muffle the snap, and clipped the chain low. The fence sagged open without a sound that would carry. They moved through, not a charge, a quiet flow. The air smelled wrong, grain dust, diesel, and something chemical under it. The ground by the blue door was packed down, scuffed by repeated foot traffic. On the wall beside the door, a cheap security camera pointed outward, but it wasn't wired. A dummy. A warning, not a system. Mace looked at it and felt his stomach tighten. People who install fake cameras don't want to stop you. They want you to know you're seen. He put a hand on the blue door. The paint was tacky, newly redone. He didn't twist the handle. He listened. At first, just the rain. Then, faintly, voices. A man laughed low. Another voice answered, sharper, annoyed. And under it all, a quiet sound, like someone shifting weight on a hard surface. Mace backed off a half step and looked at Juno. "Record?" he murmured. Juno raised her phone slightly. "Rolling." Mace nodded. Then he looked at Bear, who held a small flashlight with red film over the lens, and at Nash, who carried zip ties, not weapons, not threats, containment. Mace spoke once, barely above breath. "On my count." He grabbed the handle and turned. The door opened. A wave of stale air poured out, old feed dust, sweat, bleach, and something sour. Inside, a narrow corridor ran 10 feet to a wider room. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, casting hard shadows. 3 men were inside, 2 in hoodies, same posture as the collectors, hands low, confident, and 1 older man in a clean coat with a clipboard, perched on a folding chair like he was supervising livestock. On the table beside him, a ledger book. Open, pen uncapped. On the floor near the back wall, a teenage girl, wrists zip-tied, knees drawn up, face streaked with grime. Her eyes snapped up, wide and unfocused, then locked onto Mace like she couldn't decide if this was rescue or another trick. One hoodie stood so fast his chair scraped. "Who the—" Bear's light flicked on, red glow catching faces. Mace stepped in without raising his voice. "Hands," he said, "now." The clipboard man's mouth opened, then shut again. His eyes darted toward the door, as if expecting Rourke to burst in and save him. No one did. The hoodie on the right took a step toward the back, reaching behind a shelf. Mace's voice sharpened. "Don't!" The hoodie hesitated, then made the mistake of thinking hesitation looked weak. He lunged. Bear moved first, fast, controlled. He caught the man's wrist, redirected his momentum into the wall, and pinned him there. Not a beating, a stop. Nash stepped in and zip-tied the man's wrists before he could even finish swearing. The second hoodie froze. His eyes flicked from Bear to Mace to the door like he was weighing escape. Smitty, already behind him, pressed a forearm lightly into his shoulder and guided him down onto his knees. "Don't make it hard," Smitty said, almost bored. The man went down. The clipboard man tried to stand. "This is private property," he stammered, voice high. "You can't— I'm calling—" "Call," Juno said, stepping in with her phone held up. "Say it out loud. Tell them what you're doing here." The clipboard man's face went pale. He looked at the girl on the floor like she was furniture, then back at the camera and swallowed. Mace walked past him and crouched near the girl. He kept his hands visible. "Hey," he said softly. "What's your name?" The girl blinked hard. "Lila," she whispered, and the whisper sounded like it cost her. Mace's throat tightened. "How long have you been here, Lila?" Her eyes flicked to the ledger on the table. 2 nights, she said. Maybe 3. They keep the lights off. Juno's voice was steady as steel. "Are you hurt?" Lila nodded once, small. "They said my dad didn't pay." Mace felt something cold settle behind his ribs. Not rage yet. Focus. He looked at the clipboard man. "What's your name?" The man lifted his hand slightly as if surrendering. I'm just processing," he said quickly. "I don't touch anyone. I just do paperwork." "You write names in a book while kids sit on the floor," Mace said. The man's eyes darted to the open ledger. Mace stood and walked to the table. He didn't flip pages dramatically. He read what was already open: names, amounts, dates, extension fees, late penalties, and next to some names, a mark in the margin, small, like a code. One of the codes read BD17, Blue Door 17. Juno leaned in, filming the page. "Got it." Mace looked around the room. Shelves of feed bags, but behind them, a second door, metal, heavier, with a padlock. Scratches around the lock like it had been forced before. Mace pointed. What's behind that? The clipboard man shook his head too fast. Storage. Open it, Mace said. I don't have the key. Bear's hand pressed the tied hoodie's head gently down toward the floor. He does, Bear said. The hoodie on the floor spat. Go to hell. Bear didn't hit him. He simply reached into the man's pocket and pulled out a ring of keys. One was painted blue. Mace took the keys, stepped to the metal door, and tried the blue key. It fit. He turned it, and the padlock clicked open with a sound that felt too loud in the small room. Mace pulled the door open. The smell hit first. Stale sweat, urine, cheap disinfectant trying and failing to hide it. A cramped room beyond held 2 folding chairs, a mattress on the floor, and a small table with a cheap camera tripod. Not filming for the internet, filming for control. A corner shelf held plastic bags with personal items, wallets, phones, a child's hairbrush, a pink backpack, and on the wall, a corkboard with printed photos and handwritten amounts beneath them. A catalog. Juno's breath caught. She didn't look away. She filmed everything. Lila started crying, small, broken sounds, as if seeing the room proved she wasn't crazy. That's where they take you, she whispered. That's where they make you call. Mace shut his eyes for half a second and opened them again. Who's they? He asked, voice controlled. Lila's eyes flicked toward the clipboard man. Calder, she whispered, and the deputy. They said the deputy keeps it quiet. The clipboard man's voice cracked. That's not... Mace cut him off. How many? He asked. The clipboard man shook his head. I don't know. Juno stepped closer, phone still raised. You wrote the codes, she said. You know. The man's mouth trembled. He looked like he wanted to faint. It's not just this room, he whispered. Mace's eyes narrowed. Where else? The man swallowed. There are other doors, other numbers. Mace didn't have time to drag the truth out like a confession. He needed a location list before Calder wiped it. He stepped to the corkboard and read the header card pinned at the top. It wasn't a name. It was a route. A list of addresses, coded in a way meant to look like delivery notes. Bear was already photographing every inch. Smitty's comm buzzed in his helmet. He listened, then looked at Mace. We've got movement, he said low. Multiple vehicles coming fast, Rourke's units, and that black SUV. Calder wasn't staying in his office anymore. He was coming to clean up. Mace's mind snapped into sequence. Juno, he said, send these files to the cloud, now, multiple backups. Juno tapped, fingers fast, eyes never leaving the scene. Uploading. Mace looked at Bear. Get Lila out, now. Bear crouched and cut Lila's zip ties carefully, hands gentle. Lila flinched at the sound, then sagged when her wrists freed. Can you walk? Bear asked. Lila nodded, shaky. Mace looked at the clipboard man. You're coming too. The man's eyes widened. I'm not. You're a witness, Mace said. Or you're a corpse when Calder gets here to erase you. Choose. That landed. The clipboard man's face drained. He nodded once, terrified. Outside, through the boarded window cracks, headlights swept the lot. Engines, doors slamming, shouts carried faintly through rain. Mace's riders tightened their positions instinctively, but Mace lifted a hand. No hero moves, he said. We leave clean. They moved fast, filing out the blue door into the gray rain, guiding Lila between 2 riders like a shield. The clipboard man stumbled behind them, keys still hanging from his trembling hand. As they crossed the lot toward the fence opening, a voice cut through the rain from the street. Stop! Rourke. He stood at the lot entrance with 2 deputies, hand on his weapon, face twisted with anger and something like panic. The black SUV idled behind him, door cracked open. Someone inside was watching. Rourke's eyes locked onto Lila first, then to the clipboard man, then to Mace. You're kidnapping witnesses, Rourke shouted. Put them down and get on the ground. Mace didn't run. He didn't shout back. He lifted his phone again, screen glowing, recording. Juno stepped forward beside him, holding her own device up. Deputy, she called loud and clear, we have evidence of illegal detention inside this building. We have a minor victim. We have a ledger with codes. We are leaving to take her to safety and medical care. This is being recorded. Rourke's jaw flexed. His eyes flicked to the black SUV. Then a door opened behind the SUV, and Calder stepped out into the rain without an umbrella this time, face tight and furious, like the storm had finally gotten under his skin. His eyes went straight to Lila, then to the clipboard man, then to Mace's phone. Calder didn't speak to Mace. He spoke to Rourke, quietly. Too quiet to hear from here. But Mace saw Rourke's hand tighten on his weapon, and Calder's lips formed one clear word, readable even in the rain. Now? Rourke's hand came up from his belt, the motion sharp and practiced. The muzzle cleared leather and settled, not on Mace, not at first, but on the space between Mace and the girl. "On the ground," Rourke shouted, voice cracking with authority he could feel slipping. "Now!" Lila flinched so hard she nearly fell. Bear caught her elbow and kept her moving. The clipboard man stumbled behind them, eyes wild. Mace lifted his phone higher, screen glowing in the rain. "Everybody sees you," he said, calm enough to make the deputies hesitate. "You're aiming a weapon at a minor victim." Calder stood behind the cruisers, rain soaking his coat, face tight with rage. He didn't look at Lila like a child. He looked at her like inventory. Juno stepped forward, phone up, voice loud and clear. "This is a minor," she said. "We have video of unlawful detention inside this building. We are transporting her for medical care. If you want to stop us, say why, on camera." Rourke's eyes flicked to the phones, Mace's, Juno's, then to the black SUV. He didn't like being watched. "Put the girl down," he barked. "She's evidence." "She's a person," Juno snapped back. Calder took one step forward, voice low but venomous. "You don't get to take what's mine," he said, and the word mine landed in the rain like oil. Mace's head turned slightly toward him. "Keep talking," he replied. Rourke lifted his gun higher and pointed it directly at Bear's chest. "Last warning," he said. "Drop her." Bear didn't. He turned his body so Lila was shielded behind his shoulder. From the corner of the lot, one of Calder's hoodies sprinted toward the clipboard man, reaching out as if to drag him back through the blue door. Smitty intercepted him with a clean step, caught the man's wrist, and redirected him into the fence. Nash slapped a zip tie on his wrists in one swift motion. The second hoodie started forward toward Lila. "Don't," Mace said, flat. He kept coming anyway. A cruiser slid into the lot with a wet hiss. Pierce jumped out, radio in hand, taking in Rourke's gun. The girl, the zip-tied men, Calder watching from behind. "Rourke, lower it," Pierce said. Rourke snapped his head. "Not now, Pierce." "It's exactly now," Pierce replied, stepping closer, palms out. "You're pointing a firearm at civilians, and at a kid." Calder's voice drifted in, smooth and dangerous. "Officer Pierce, do your job." Pierce didn't look at him. "Lower it," he repeated. Rourke's breathing went sharp. He stepped forward and jabbed the barrel closer to Bear. "I said drop her!" Pierce moved between them, half a step, just enough to shift the line of fire away from Lila. "Back up," Pierce warned. Rourke yanked his arm free and surged again. His boot slipped in the mud. The gun went off. A single crack that punched through the rain and silenced the lot. The round slammed into the gravel near Pierce's boot, spitting stone. For half a second, no one breathed. Then phones rose higher. A woman across the street shouted, "He fired!" Rourke stared at the smoking muzzle like it had betrayed him. Mace didn't move toward him. He just said, loud enough for every recording, "Accidental discharge. Deputy fired. Timestamp it." Juno's voice followed instantly. "We are leaving for medical care. If anyone blocks us, it's on video." Calder snapped something toward the SUV, and the engine revved, angling to cut off the fence gap. Two riders rolled their bikes into the narrow path and stopped sideways. They didn't ram. They just became an obstacle the SUV couldn't cross without committing murder on camera. Bear and the others slipped through the opening. Mace backed through last, still recording, eyes never leaving Calder. "You can't erase what you already said," he told him. Calder's mouth tightened. "You think this town will testify?" he hissed. Mace nodded toward the phones in the crowd. "Not anymore." As the bike started in staggered bursts, Pierce's voice cut through behind them. "Rourke, holster it, now!" Mace turned his head just enough to meet Pierce's eyes. Pierce's hand was shaking around his radio. His face said, "I saw it." Mace reached into his vest, pulled out a small memory card holder, and flicked it underhand. It landed at Pierce's boots with a soft click. "Copy everything," Mace called. "Then decide who you are." Nash took Lila on the back, wrapping her in a spare jacket and placing his helmet on her head. She shook, hands clamped around his waist. The clipboard man was put on Smitty's bike, wedged between two riders so he couldn't bolt. Mace keyed his comm. "Holt," he said, "they're escalating. Keep Eli moved and quiet." Holt's reply came tight. "Rourke just put out a missing child call. He's framing it as kidnapping. Road units are checking parking lots." Mace's stomach tightened. "Copy," he said. "Stay off main roads." They split directions. The black SUV picked the wrong group to tail and lost them in the back lanes. 10 minutes later, they reached Lulu's diner, now half awake, lights on, coffee brewing. Nora stood at the window the moment she heard the bikes, face pale but steady. Frank hovered behind her like a man who wished he could rewind his own cruelty. Mace dismounted and nodded to Nora. "We need your back room." Nora didn't ask why. She unlocked it. Lila was seated on a chair with a blanket over her shoulders. Nora poured hot tea with trembling hands. Lila stared at the cup like she didn't trust warmth anymore. Juno crouched beside her. "We're going to get you to a doctor," she said, "but I need your father's name." "Mark Davis," Lila whispered. Juno wrote it down, then looked to the clipboard man. "Your name?" His throat bobbed. "Elliot Crane," he whispered. Juno didn't react to the excuse. "How many doors, Elliot?" Crane's eyes flicked to the diner wall, to a framed Little League photo like it might protect him. "I don't know all of them," he said. "Calder keeps the list. He changes them." "Who moves the victims?" Bear asked. Crane's voice thinned. "Rourke, and two guys who used to do repo work." Frank's face drained. "Jesus," he whispered. Juno snapped her fingers lightly. "Focus," she told the room, then turned to Nora. "You said you'd talk." Nora swallowed, then nodded once. "He called the kid collateral," she said. "I heard it." Frank's mouth opened, closed. "He threatened my business," he admitted. "Said he'd shut me down if I didn't cooperate." Juno slid paper toward him. "Write it." A couple more people from last night drifted in. Two truckers and a young mother, drawn by rumor and the memory of a deputy smiling while a kid cried. Their phones came out before they even sat down. May stood between dining room and back room. "If you saw something," he said, "say it now. Quiet is what kept this going." The mother's voice trembled. "I saw him take the medicine," she said. "I saw him shove." Juno wrote fast, pages filling. Bear stepped out to call a medic they trusted. When he came back in, his face was set. "Ambulance is coming to the alley," he said, "unmarked. We hand her off quiet." Mace nodded. "Good." His phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered, listened, and his eyes narrowed. "Pierce?" he said. A breath on the other end. "I copied it," Pierce whispered. "The card, everything. I sent it to a contact outside the county." He swallowed hard. "Rourke's coming for you. He's telling dispatch you're armed. He's telling them you kidnapped a kid and a witness." Mace kept his voice low. "You ready to say that out loud?" Silence. Then, smaller. "Not yet." Mace didn't insult him. "Then keep breathing," he said, "and keep your copy safe." He ended the call and looked at Juno. "State has files," he said. "Pierce too. Calder can't bury it." Juno's jaw tightened. "He can still hurt people." "He'll try," Mace said. Mace stepped into the front dining area and looked out through the rain-streaked glass. A cruiser rolled slowly down the strip, scanning. His comm buzzed. "Holt again." "They're asking questions about you," Holt said. "Rourke's telling people you took a kid for ransom." "Eli stays invisible," Mace replied. "I'll fix the narrative." He ended the call and turned back. "Everyone keeps recording," he said to the room. "If he walks in here, he does it under lights." Chairs scraped as people repositioned to see the door. Somebody killed the diner's music. The bell above the entrance suddenly felt too loud, like it could give them away. Nora's hands shook, but she nodded. Frank swallowed and straightened his apron like it was armor. Outside, the cruiser at the end of the strip slowed again, and this time, it stopped. Its lights flashed once. The driver's door opened, and Deputy Rourke stepped out, heading straight for the diner. The bell above Lulu's door rang once, bright and innocent, and every person inside flinched like it was a gunshot. Deputy Rourke stepped in with rain on his shoulders and a smile that didn't belong in a place that served pancakes. He didn't burst in screaming. He didn't rush. He strolled, slow, letting the badge lead the room like a threat that didn't have to raise its voice. Behind him, two uniforms hovered near the entrance, not charging, just present. And outside, through the glass, another cruiser idled with its lights off, angled so anyone trying to leave would have to be seen. Rourke's eyes swept the diner, taking inventory. Bikers near the walls, civilians clustered too tight, phones held a little too steady, Nora pale behind the counter, Frank stiff as a board. Then his gaze landed on Mace. "There you are," Rourke said warmly, like he'd come to return a lost wallet. "We need to talk." Mace didn't move from his spot between the dining room and the back hall. He didn't block the door. He didn't cross into Rourke's space. He simply held position the way a bridge holds a river. "Talk," Mace said. Rourke's smile widened. "Not in front of everybody," he replied. "This is law enforcement business." Nora's voice cut through, shaking but audible. "Deputy, everything you say is being recorded." Rourke's eyes flicked to her. For a fraction of a second, the smile slipped, then returned. "Nora," he said gently, "go back to work." Nora didn't move. Frank cleared his throat, trying to sound brave and failing. He took medicine from a sick woman last night," Frank blurted, then immediately looked like he regretted it. The room went still. A couple customers in booths raised their phones higher. Rourke turned toward Frank slowly, smile still on. "Frank," he said, "you sure you want to insert yourself into an ongoing case?" Frank's Adam's apple bobbed. "I'm sure," he forced out, voice thin. Rourke nodded like he respected courage. "Great," he said. "Then you can say it again at the station." Juno stepped out from the back hall with her clipboard in one hand and her phone up in the other. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "We already have written statements," she said. "Multiple witnesses, time-stamped, with names." Rourke's eyes hardened. "Who are you?" "Someone who documents," Juno replied. "Something you seem allergic to." Rourke took a step forward. One of his deputies shifted, hand hovering near his belt. Mace's tone stayed even. "You're here without a warrant," he said. "You're here to intimidate." Rourke laughed softly. "Warrant?" he repeated. "I don't need a warrant to retrieve a missing child." That word hit the room like smoke. The young mother in a booth stiffened. "Missing child?" she whispered. Rourke nodded toward the back hall, as if the diner itself had stolen something. "Eli," he said louder, performing for the room now. 6 years old, removed from his legal guardian by a group of men who have no right to him." Nora's hand slammed the counter once, hard enough to rattle cups. She startled herself but didn't back down. "You called him collateral," she said, voice breaking into anger. "I heard it." Rourke's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Nora," he said, "you're emotional." Juno stepped forward and held up her phone. "We also have video," she said. "From outside Calder Financial. Calder told you to get the boy and this ends. It's recorded." One of the deputies near the door blinked, confusion flickering. "Deputy?" Rourke snapped his head toward him, and the deputy went quiet immediately. Rank reasserted itself. Rourke looked back at Mace. "You've got a girl in your custody too," he said. "A witness, which means you're obstructing." Mace didn't deny it. "We rescued her from a locked room," he said. "You can call it custody if you want. Most people call it saving." Rourke's smile finally thinned to nothing. "Bring her out," he said. "Now." "She's being transferred for medical care," Juno replied. Quietly. Rourke's eyes flicked to the side window, where he could see the alley access. He'd already anticipated it. Mace saw that glance and knew the diner wasn't the only stage right now. The alley mattered. He keyed his comm without looking down. "Bear," he said softly. "Move." A click in his ear, no words back. Rourke took another step. His voice lowered, dropping the performance and bringing the real threat closer. "You think your little recordings protect you," he murmured, "but I can bury you in charges before lunch: trespass, kidnapping, assault, obstruction." Mace held his gaze. "Do it," he said. Rourke's eyes tightened, frustrated by the lack of fear. "Where's the child?" Mace didn't answer. Rourke's jaw flexed, then he turned his head slightly toward his deputies. "Search the back," he ordered. Nora's voice jumped. "You can't." Rourke cut her off. "Watch me." The two deputies moved toward the back hall. Holt wasn't here. Eli wasn't here. Mace had made sure. But the back room held Lila, the clipboard man, the statements, everything Calder wanted gone. Juno stepped in their path, clipboard held like a shield. "You do not enter without a warrant," she said, clear and loud, and every one of you is being recorded. One deputy hesitated, the other kept moving, eyes locked ahead like a man following orders because thinking was risky. Mace didn't touch them. He didn't block with his body. He let the civilians do what the town had forgotten it could do. The trucker with the gray beard stood up from his booth, phone raised. "You come back there," he said, voice rough. "You're going to do it on camera. I'm sending it to my daughter in the state office right now." The young mother stood too, trembling. "I'm recording," she said, "and I already sent last night's clip to my sister." Frank swallowed hard and stepped out from behind the counter, putting himself between the deputy and the hall. "No," he said, voice shaking. "Not this time." Rourke's eyes flashed. For a second the diner became something else. Not a room of silent people, a room of witnesses. Rourke realized it at the same time Mace did. He couldn't drag people through the hall without making the story worse. So he changed tactics. He stepped back, smile returning like a blade sliding into a sheath. "Fine," he said brightly. "If you won't cooperate, I'll do it the right way." He pulled his radio and spoke into it, voice steady, official. "Dispatch Stark County units to Lulu's. I need assistance. Potential kidnapping situation. Multiple suspects." That was the net. Outside, a distant siren began to rise, one at first, then another, faint but approaching, stacking like pressure. Nora's face drained. "He's calling the whole county," she whispered. Juno's jaw tightened. "And Calder will use it to wipe the office," she murmured. Mace's comm buzzed. "Holt." His voice came tight through the static. "They're sweeping roads for Eli," Holt said. "And, Mace, the water tower light just blinked twice. Eli's code, the signal." Mace's eyes lifted to the diner window, to the gray skyline where the water tower stood beyond the strip. 2 blinks meant collectors were moving. It meant Calder wasn't just playing paperwork now, he was deploying. Mace looked at Juno once, and she understood immediately. The diner was about to become a trap. Screens, sirens, bodies, and in the middle of it all, a deputy who would love nothing more than to discover a biker with a kid and call it justice. Mace's voice stayed calm. "We leave," he said quietly. Juno's eyes widened. "Now?" Mace nodded. "Now. We don't give him the scene." Rourke watched their faces change and smiled, sensing motion. "That's right," he said. "Run. Makes you look guilty." Mace didn't argue. He turned to the room, voice low but carrying. "If he asks you anything," he said, "you tell the truth you already wrote down, and you keep your copies." The trucker nodded once. The mother nodded too, trembling. Nora's voice cracked. "What about the girl?" Mace keyed his comm again. "Bear's moving her," he said. "She's not staying here." As if on cue, the alley door at the back of the diner opened a fraction, just enough for a shadow to pass through. No one in the dining room noticed except Mace, Juno, and Rourke. Rourke noticed. His eyes snapped to the hall, and the smile vanished. He lunged toward the back. Mace moved at the same instant, not to tackle, not to punch. He stepped into Rourke's path, shoulder to shoulder, and stopped him with nothing but position. Rourke's breath hit Mace's face. "Get out of my way," he hissed. Mace's voice dropped. "You don't get her back." Rourke's hand slammed into Mace's chest, shoving hard. Mace rocked back half a step, then planted again. Phones caught it. The shove, the aggression, the deputy losing control in a diner full of witnesses. Rourke realized too late. He turned, facing the room, trying to reshape the story. "He assaulted me." "Liar," Frank said, voice loud and raw. "You shoved him." The word liar hung in the air like a break in the spell. Outside, the first siren hit the end of the strip, getting closer fast. Rourke's eyes flicked to the window. He heard the backup coming and felt power returning. He leaned toward Mace one last time, voice low enough only Mace could hear. "You can't protect him forever," he whispered, "and when I find him, I'm going to make sure he pays for tonight." Mace held his gaze. "He already did," he said. Then Mace stepped back, turned, and walked toward the side exit with Juno, calm as if they were leaving after breakfast. Rourke watched them go, smile creeping back. He thought he had them. He didn't see the bigger trap forming, because traps feel like control right up until the moment they snap shut. The bell over the door rang again as another cruiser pulled into the lot, lights flashing bright, and in that same moment, Pierce's voice came through Mace's comm, tight, urgent, shaken. "Mace," Pierce said, "state's on the line. They just asked me one question." Mace didn't stop walking. What question? Pierce swallowed audibly. They asked if Deputy Rourke fired his weapon today. Pierce's words hit like a switch flipping somewhere far above their heads. Mace, Pierce repeated, voice tight in the comm. State's on the line. They asked if Deputy Rourke fired his weapon today. Mace didn't slow as he walked through the rain behind Lulu's, Juno beside him, 2 riders shadowing them without crowding. Sirens were stacking now, county units pouring into the strip like water into a sink. He answered Pierce with one sentence. Yes. A beat of silence on the line, then Pierce again, breathing hard. They want it in writing. They want the video. You have it, Mace said. Send it, now. Juno's fingers were already moving on her phone, not panicked, efficient. She uploaded the diner recordings, the Blue Door footage, the ledger photos, the clip of Calder telling Rourke to get the boy, and the shot fired into the gravel. Multiple destinations, multiple backups, too many copies for a small-town cleanup. Behind the diner, Bear's bike rolled in with Lila tucked close, helmet on, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her eyes looked different now, still scared, but no longer confused about what had happened to her. She understood it was real, and that meant she could name it. We're going, Bear said. Where? Lila's voice was small. A hospital that isn't owned by your nightmares, Juno replied, and then state protection. Lila nodded once like she didn't trust promises, but she trusted movement. Mace keyed his comm. Holt, he said, bring Eli, not to the diner, straight to the meet point. Holt answered immediately, wind in the background. Copy, he's with me. Any tails? Mace asked. 2 cars tried, Holt said. We lost them, but the water tower blinked twice again. Mace's jaw tightened. They're sweeping. Move faster. They reached the edge of the lot where 3 bikes waited, engines already warm. No parade, no lineup, just a transfer point. Juno looked at Mace. If county rolls you, they'll charge you before they ask questions. Let them try, Mace said, but his eyes were on the road. The goal wasn't bravado. The goal was to get the last vulnerable pieces out, Lila, Eli, and Crane, before Calder could reclaim them. Crane stumbled out of the diner's back door between 2 riders, face gray, hands shaking so badly he could barely walk. He wasn't a hero. He was a man who'd realized he was disposable. State will eat you alive, Juno told him, blunt. Crane nodded, swallowing hard. Better than Calder, he whispered. That was the truth of it. Calder didn't forgive mistakes. He erased them. A cruiser screeched into the diner lot, tires spitting water. Rourke was inside, no siren, lights flashing bright now, performing urgency. 2 more cruisers followed. Mace saw him through the glass and knew Rourke would come out hunting a headline. Move, Mace said, and the riders moved. Bear rolled first with Lila. Another rider followed with Crane. Mace and Juno went last, carving out through the back service lane, cutting away from the strip before the county could close the net. At the meet point, a gravel pull-off near the river road, the handoff was waiting. A state vehicle and a medic contact they trusted, not local, not bought. The medic checked Lila's wrists, her face, her breathing. Lila flinched at touch, then steadied when she realized nobody was forcing her to smile or speak. Name? The medic asked softly. Lila Davis, she said, clearer than before. My dad's Mark. Juno handed over the written name, the timestamp, and the photo of BD-17 in the ledger. She's a victim, Juno said. Not evidence, not leverage. The state driver's eyes were hard. We'll take her. Lila's hands clutched the blanket. She looked at Mace once, not thankful, not dramatic, just trying to understand what kind of adults existed in the world. Mace nodded once. You're safe now, he said. Lila didn't smile. She simply got into the vehicle, and the door shut with a final clean sound. Crane tried to back away like he wanted to run in any direction. 2 state agents stepped out and took him by the arm, not rough, not gentle, just firm. You're coming too, one said. You'll tell it once, and then you'll tell it again. Crane's eyes darted to Mace. They'll kill me, he whispered. You already knew that, Mace replied. That's why you came. Crane's shoulders sagged. He nodded, and he got in. The state vehicle pulled away. 2 minutes later, Holt arrived with Eli. The boy was strapped behind Holt, helmet too big, hands locked around Holt's waist. When Holt stopped, Eli didn't let go right away. He stared at the river like it could swallow him. Mace walked to him and crouched. Eli's voice trembled. "Are they still coming?" "Not to you," Mace said. "Not anymore." Eli's eyes were red, rimmed with exhaustion. "They always come back." Mace didn't lie. "They try," he said, "but now they have to do it in daylight." Eli swallowed. "Mom?" Jax's voice came through Mace's calm, quiet, controlled. "Hospital says she's stable. State's placing a guard. Calder's name is already on a desk that isn't in this county." Eli's shoulders shook once, and he pressed his forehead into Holt's jacket like his body finally ran out of fear fuel. Juno exhaled, looking at her phone as it pinged with confirmations. Uploads received, files downloaded, contacts opened. Pierce called again. This time, he wasn't whispering. "I told them," Pierce said, voice strained. "I told State he fired. I sent the clip. They're dispatching investigators. And Mace, Rourke just got pulled off the road. Another unit stopped him." A pause. Then Pierce added, smaller. "Rourke's screaming my name." Mace closed his eyes for half a beat. "Keep your head down," he said, "and keep your copy safe." Calder didn't get arrested in that exact minute. Men like Calder rarely fall fast. They fall when there are too many hands holding the rope. But the rope was finally there. Back in town, county units flooded Lulu's, and Rourke tried to turn it into a story about bikers and kidnapping. Then, State called the sheriff directly. Then, the sheriff got the time-stamped dispatcher audio. Then, the video of the shot fired hit a screen. Then, witness statements started arriving from phones that didn't belong to the town anymore. And when the state investigators arrived, they didn't start with Mace. They started with the Blue Door. They walked into BD-17 with warrants and cameras and gloves. They opened the metal room. They photographed the corkboard. They bagged the tripod. They took the ledger like it was poison. Calder's office got sealed before lunch. Rourke tried to resign before he could be suspended. It didn't work. Resigning doesn't delete video. Within days, Marla woke up in a hospital bed with a guard outside her door and a social worker sitting quietly in a chair, offering real options instead of threats. When she asked where Eli was, she didn't get a lecture. She got him. Eli climbed onto her bed carefully, like he was afraid reality would snap. He pressed his cheek against her hand. Marla cried silently, because crying loudly had never been safe in that town. They didn't go back to the trailer. State placed them somewhere Calder couldn't reach with a clipboard, a small apartment in a different county, a fridge with food, a lock that worked, a phone that wasn't monitored. On the first morning, Eli stood in a kitchen that smelled like clean soap and toast, holding a bowl of soup he didn't have to beg for. He looked at Marla. "Do we have to pay tomorrow?" he asked. Marla's eyes filled again. "No," she whispered, "not anymore." Weeks later, Mace returned to Lulu's alone. No wall of bikes, no storm. Nora poured him coffee without shaking. Frank kept his eyes down and mumbled an apology that sounded like it hurt. Mace didn't make a speech. He didn't take credit. He sat at the counter and watched the door. When he left, he dropped a folded piece of paper on the counter for Nora, an address, a number, a name, a hotline, and an investigator who would still answer if the town tried to rebuild the system under a new sign. Outside, his bike waited. As he put on his helmet, his sleeve rode up, and the thin scar near his mouth pulled slightly, an old memory trying to tug him backward. He looked at his wrist for a second, and for the first time, he let himself remember why Eli's bracelet and that tiny brass ring had hit him like a punch. Because years ago, long before this town, long before Lulu's, someone else had worn a ring with that same stamp, someone he hadn't been able to save. Mace swung a leg over his bike, started the engine, and rode out without looking back. Because this time, the ending wasn't a grave. It was a boy eating soup in a kitchen where tomorrow finally meant something real.